Chapter 931. After a while, after confirming that Lin Yuan had gone far away, Qing Shuangjian slowly straightened his body, revealing an expression as if he had just survived a disaster. When he saw the curious, doubtful and contemptuous gazes of the onlookers around him, he could not help but blush and growl, "What are you all doing here? From now on, the entire city is under martial law. Everyone has to cooperate with the investigation. Without the token of the Red Dust Society, anyone who leaves the city without permission will die." After roaring this sentence, the gazes still did not disperse. Only then did Qing Shuangjian take a deep breath and say with a thick face, "What do you know?" Lei Qiuming, who was protected by spiritual master He, had his head shattered by her palm. In the entire southern cultivation world, I, Qing Shuangjian, am the only one who can take a palm strike from the Empress and not die. Although these words were bragging, it did make sense. When Lin Yuan had just arrived, everything was not going well, and there was hostility in his heart. Coupled with the long-cherished wish of the girl before her death, he naturally did not hold back. Anyone who angered him would have a good ending if they were left with an intact corpse. Naturally, there would not be anyone who could take a palm strike from him and not die. However, that palm strike just now was only to teach a subordinate a lesson. Naturally, he would not smash his head in the street. It was like a joke, like not talking about martial ethics. It was the case when it was said, but when it was heard, everyone laughed it off. Immediately, the surrounding onlookers laughed out loud, and the air was filled with a happy atmosphere. Qing Shuangjian did not care. He just turned his head to look at the figure that was gradually disappearing, and could not help but sigh slightly in his heart. The last time they met, Guan Zhaoshan was still at the peak of the airborne realm. She barely had some weight, but it was still not enough to scare people. If it were not for the help of the Ether Association behind her, not many people in the southern forest would take her seriously. However, after coming out of seclusion this time, he could no longer see through Guan Zhaoshan's cultivation. Although there were not many similar feelings in the past, those who could give him such a feeling were the true big shots of the Void Realm. The present Guan Zhaoshan was already an existence that he needed to look up to. Many years later, those who knew the truth of this matter were either dead or old, and no one ever mentioned it again. A certain southern green forest overlord who had washed his hands of gold and was enjoying the company of his grandchildren had once joked with his descendants, saying that he had once fought with the famous empress when he was young. In the end, he was only defeated by a single palm strike. He jokingly said, "Empress, you're not bad." After that, he retreated unscathed, attracting the admiration of countless descendants. Of course, that was a story for another day. Meanwhile, Lin Yuan strolled on the long street. The cultivators and martial artists passing by raised their eyes and looked around. No one dared to set their eyes on him. After all, she had slapped Qing Shuangjian in the face on the street and claimed that the rule of 2 kills, 2 deaths was set by him. Then, there was no need to say more about the identity of this white-clothed woman. Anyone with a bit of insight knew that the person that Zhulu City could not afford to offend the most was the Empress Guan Zhaoshan, who had gone into seclusion to cultivate after leaving behind the Empress arsenal. After Lei Qiuming's death, the government of the South collapsed. The various cities were already weak to begin with, and now, they did not even have the authority to participate in the affairs of the South. The aristocratic families and sects were now independent, and their existences were like decorations and mascots. Gradually, some people began to spread rumors that Guan Zhaoshan had killed Qing Peng King, and according to the rules, should take over the government of the South. It was just that they could not find Guan Zhaoshan, but the title of Empress gradually spread. After all, Guan Zhaoshan was not to be trifled with. She had the Ether Association behind her. As long as she did not take over the government of the South and insist on stepping on the heads of the aristocratic families and sects to establish a new order, they could not be bothered with this matter. They allowed the title of Empress to spread, but in their hearts, they thought that it was just the last struggle of the lackeys of Lei Qiuming who were unwilling to lose power. Even Guan Zhaoshan could not be bothered with them. Moreover, the situation in the South was not stable now. The aristocratic families and sects were attacking each other, and there were also remnants of the demon cult causing trouble. Especially recently, the Sky Demon had gradually shifted his power to the south. Seeing that he was about to swallow up the territories in the south, many people were in a terrible fix. But at this time, Lin Yuan had returned. It seems that trouble will continue to find me. Lin Yuan sat in the main hall of the Red Dust Inn. After inquiring about the recent situation in the south from the innkeeper, he faintly sighed. He wanted to go to the Endless Sea as soon as possible to solve the trap that the dragon palaces of the Four Seas and the Sea Demon Guild had set for him. However, with the current situation in the south, it would be difficult for him to leave. He could not directly enter the Endless Sea from Zhulu City. At that time, he would have to use the passage. If he did not solve this problem, he reckoned that he would not be able to take another step outside of Zhulu City. It's easy to solve. The innkeeper laughed, leaned against the counter, and said, "They're just afraid that you'll take over the political power in the south and establish a new political power together with the Ether Society to suppress them. Therefore, it doesn't matter if you express your stance or not. It's just that in the next few days, the news of your return has spread. Those guys will naturally come knocking on your door to show off their strength to intimidate you. Kill some of them and beat some of them up. But what I lack the most right now is time. God knows how long it'll take for them to acknowledge my existence." Lin Yuan let out another sigh and shook his head, feeling troubled. "About 7 or 8 days. It's still fine for those heading north. After all, it's closer to the extraterrestrial demons. Even if they have any ideas, they won't make things difficult for you now. The nearby cities all know of your reputation and won't do anything to offend you. Even if they do come, they'll only be small fries who want to make a name for themselves. If you're a little more ruthless, they won't dare to continue." At this point, the innkeeper paused, and the smile on his face gradually disappeared. He said in a deep voice, "The most troublesome ones are them. They won't be targeted by the Sky Demon for the time being. Although the demon sect has wreaked havoc there, the identities of the demon sect members there have been exposed. They'll be cleaned up immediately. At present, it's considered the safest place. People will naturally want to find trouble when they have nothing to do. I also heard that many cities have taken the opportunity to get involved with the monsters from the outer sea. When the time comes, it won't be just the cultivators from the south who will come knocking on your door." Monsters from the outer sea? Hearing this, Lin Yuan's eyes suddenly lit up. That's right, he had almost forgotten about this. The turmoil in the deep sea of the Endless Sea had been so great. Although the monsters from the outer sea didn't interfere, they weren't fools. At that time, they had probably already contacted the cities along the southern coast. Once the monsters from the deep sea couldn't resist, they would immediately go ashore or dive into the Wei River to avoid disaster. No one would sit and wait for death. The dragon race of the Four Seas wasn't the only one with foresight. Chapter 932. As it turned out, the manager's experience wasn't always right. In other words, the cultivators in the coastal cities had too much time on their hands. In 3 days, a large number of cultivators with swords and swords swarmed into Zhulu City. They either bought or robbed, occupying all the residences near the Red Dust Inn. It wasn't rare for cultivators to enter Zhulu City in the south. However, most of the cultivators who came in the past were either mortal evolution states or airborne states. It was difficult for them to survive in the wilderness, so they could only seek refuge in the big cities nearby. This time, however, most of the cultivators who swarmed into Zhulu City were at the peak of the airborne state. There were also a dozen or so Heaven Star Division state cultivators. It was rumored that a few of these murderous cultivators had been recognized. They were all Kongming state cultivators who were as famous as the Red Dust Taoist in the south. Coupled with the way these outsiders had surrounded the Red Dust Inn and the sudden appearance of the Empress, people quickly realized that the Red Dust Association and the Empress were going to be in trouble. The experts of the Lulin Association who were scattered all over the place headed to Zhulu City. It was said that there were also a few Kongming realm practitioners from the Ether Association who had made their move. For a moment, the atmosphere in Zhulu City was tense. According to the usual practice in the cultivation world, there would be countless spectators when powerful beings fought. After all, watching them fight was beneficial for cultivation. However, a fight between Kongming state cultivators? Normal people would want to stay as far away as possible. When one's cultivation reached a certain level, even the aftermath of a fight could kill countless spectators. If Kongming state cultivators fought without restraint, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that the sky was falling and the earth was collapsing. Even cultivators below the Heaven Star Division state couldn't escape death if they were caught in the fight, let alone the mortals in Julu City. As the atmosphere in Julu City became more and more tense, the low-level cultivators and ordinary people nearby began to evacuate to areas further away from the Red Dust Inn. After all, outside of Julu City, the Sky Demon, the aquatic monsters, and the remnants of the demonic sect ruled the land. They had been able to move freely, but as the mysterious cultivators began to target the Empress, the cultivators of the Greenwood Forest who were carrying out missions for the Red Dust Society all rushed back to Julu City to help. The rest of the disciples of the sects who were only doing their jobs but not their actual strength couldn't suppress the cultivators at all. With their strength, only death awaited them if they left Julu City. The next morning, Lin Yuan strolled out of the Red Dust Inn. He was still dressed in a white robe with a 3 feet 3 horizontal blade hanging from his waist. His eyes released an extremely tyrannical aura. Those Heavenly Dipper Realm cultivators who were eyeing him covetously felt their chi and blood surging up after being glared at by him. They could only resentfully retreat to the back and adjust their breathing. At the same time, their hearts were also greatly shocked. How could this she-devil be so terrifying? When Guan Zhaoshan was active in Julu City last time, she was only at the peak of the airborne realm. The reason why the Southern Greenwood Forest gave her face was partly because they were afraid of the Ether Society and partly because the Empress Arsenal was too tempting. However, after seeing Guan Zhaoshan in person today, they realized that this she-devil's strength was unfathomable. She was far from someone they could challenge as a Kongming Realm cultivator. Interesting. 4 Kongming Realm cultivators have come in 3 days. Lin Yuan put his hands behind his back with a faint smile on his handsome face. It was as if he wasn't facing a group of high-level cultivators, but a group of overconfident chickens and pottery dogs. Guan Zhaoshan, you are tyrannical and tyrannical. You wantonly killed the heroes of the Greenwood Forest. In order to eliminate the dissidents, you allowed those evil thieves to commit heinous crimes. You didn't even let the babies in swaddling clothes go. Today, this old man will kill you here and seek justice for the innocent victims. An old man in a purple robe with white hair and beard stood in the air. As his voice rang out, blood chi seeped out of his body and formed the shadow of a blood dragon behind him. Like the old man in purple robe, the dragon coldly sized up Lin Yuan with a smile. The shopkeeper stretched his back and walked out of the Red Dust Tavern. He walked to Lin Yuan's side with a smile and said loudly, "Empress, this is Zhao Fuhai, the Golden Saber Dragon King, who once dominated the Southern Greenwood Forest. Although he has been in seclusion for more than 10 years, this Zhao Fuhai was the boss of the Southern Greenwood Forest 10 years ago. Even the leaders of the first-rate sects have to be courteous when they see him. Chickens and dogs, 1 saber is enough." The smile on Lin Yuan's face was still as warm as ever. He pointed at the other 3 Kongming Realm experts and asked, "What about these dregs?" As soon as his voice fell, the faces of the 4 Kongming Realm powerhouses suddenly turned red, and the aura energy on their bodies was faintly unstable. They glared at Lin Yuan angrily, as if they wanted to swallow Lin Yuan alive. Wasn't this young man a bit too frivolous? Even Ether would have to be courteous to these 4 Kongming Realm experts. In front of him, were they not chickens and dogs or dregs? Lu Jingsheng of the Dual Blades sect, when the divine martial great emperor overthrew the 10,000 Swords dynasty, he led his disciples to the south to support him. However, at that time, before the divine martial great emperor sent out his troops, he had already started to support them. Even after the situation was settled, he still continued to support them. We all laughed at him for being a coward who only knew how to make a name for himself but didn't dare to do anything big. Otherwise, the Dual Blades sect wouldn't be in such dire straits right now in the south. Ha! The shopkeeper was only in the Heaven Star border realm, but when he talked about Lu Jingsheng, he didn't hide it at all. Although the spectating Heaven Star Border Realm cultivators didn't want to get involved, they couldn't help but laugh. Guan Zhaoshan and this senior were indeed a bit arrogant, but the shopkeeper was telling the truth. Although Lu Jingsheng was in the Kongming realm, his reputation in the south wasn't good. He was even called the shame of the Kongming realm. Under his leadership, the Twin Blade sect was indeed declining day by day. Now that the south's cultivation world was trying to kill Guan Zhaoshan, he came to join in the fun. Moreover, he was the first to arrive. It was hard to say whether he was worried about Guan Zhaoshan being easy to bully, but he did appear today to gain a good reputation. However, he didn't expect to meet a tough opponent. Lu Jingsheng's reputation as a coward was not undeserved. After being humiliated like this, Lu Jingsheng's face only turned red. He angrily glared at the shopkeeper and didn't dare to look at Guan Zhaoshan. He didn't even have the courage to open his mouth and shout. Most likely, he was still afraid of Taoist red dust behind the shopkeeper. Senior Lu, you heard it too. So, you should go back where you came from. Lin Yuan gently shook his head and said with ridicule, I have no interest in drawing my blade against someone like you. Chapter 933. Brat, you don't know the immensity of heaven and earth after becoming famous. You should call us seniors. A middle-aged Taoist nun in a white Taoist robe angrily rebuked. Her right hand moved, and she had already pulled out her sword. She sneered and said, if you know the difference between life and death, obediently admit your mistake and apologize to us. Then, the seniors may consider sparing your life. Lin Yuan acted as if he didn't hear the nun and looked at the shopkeeper. This is cold between the eyebrows. Li Ran, the master of the Qingyin Temple and an abandoned disciple of the Yuxian sect. However, we have never heard of the Yuxian sect. The Qingyin Temple is a good Taoist temple, but it has been run like a brothel by Master Li. It is very famous in the southern cultivation world. Only the gentle village of the Demon Venerable can surpass its reputation. The shopkeeper understood and immediately introduced the middle-aged Taoist nun who scolded Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan was speechless. What the F***ck is this? One is a big brother of the underworld, one is a shameless vain person, and the other is a brothel madam? Are you kidding me? These people can cultivate to the Kongming realm. How lucky must they be to be able to cultivate to the Kongming realm? Following Lin Yuan's gradually desperate gaze, the shopkeeper also turned his gaze to the fourth powerhouse of the Kongming realm and said with a straight face, the one you are looking at now is called Su Huchan. He was once a disciple of the Lioli Jade Cicada Temple of Buddhism, and his cultivation and martial arts are all Orthodox Buddhism. However, this person's murderous intent is too heavy. Whether it is eliminating monsters or evil cultivators, he has never left anyone alive. Over time, the sin of killing was too heavy, and the Buddhism cultivation method could not be improved half an inch, so he had to return to the secular world and go down the mountain. Su Huchan was indeed different from the others. Seeing Lin Yuan's gaze turn to him, he just put his palms together. The expression on his face did not change, but an endless murderous aura gushed out. The murderous aura almost condensed into a substance, forming the image of hell. All right. Lin Yuan took a deep breath and said in a low voice, a great master who entered the Tao through martial arts, a sinful Buddha who is full of murderous aura. Let's not talk about the strength of the other two for now. It should be enough to warm up. Warm up? This time, the shopkeeper was stunned. **CK. As a Void Netherworld Realm cultivator, who cares if you can win against 4 Void Netherworld Realm cultivators? In any case, the Crimson Dust Society is tied to you. It doesn't matter if you play along with them and embarrass them. In any case, they won't let the Crimson Dust Society off. But even if you want to act tough, you shouldn't act like this. 1 against 4. How the **CK can this be called a warm-up? Should it be enough? Without waiting for the shopkeeper to recover from his shock, the blade at Lin Yuan's waist was unsheathed. In an instant, the sound of the blade resounded throughout the city, as if a hidden dragon that had been dormant for a long time had come out of the abyss, roaring wantonly to feel the aura of freedom. This blade was worth 120,000 incense power, which was almost the total amount of incense power generated by Lin Yuan's followers in the past 3 days. Name, Yuanlong, grade? Special characteristics, enslaved dragon, no urge. Special characteristics, holding this blade to kill a dragon descendant has a 10% chance of imprisoning the dragon soul. After the imprisonment is successful, the dragon pattern will be drawn on the blade, and the wielder will be able to release the dragon soul according to his wishes, allowing it to fight with the enemy with the same power it had when it was alive. However, the dragon soul is fragile. Once it encounters a spiritual treasure or magical power that targets the soul, there is a high possibility that it will be destroyed. Special characteristics. The material of this blade is special, and the system can't detect it. According to the collection of refining materials in the universe, there are very few that can compare to this blade. Among the spiritual treasures below the primordial spiritual treasure, it can be said to be indestructible and indestructible. P.S. If you can't break the opponent's weapon with one slash, then slash it 100 times. The winner will definitely be you. This blade didn't have the characteristic of cold poison that Guan Shanxue had, which was a headache for the opponent. However, the characteristic of inexorability was extremely powerful. On the contrary, the seemingly awesome characteristic of imprisoning the dragon was just SOSO in Lin Yuan's eyes. After all, demons and monsters were not presentable. Even if they had the power they had when they were alive, as long as they encountered a spiritual treasure or magical power that could restrain demons and monsters, they would be useless. No matter what kind of dragon soul Lin Yuan imprisoned, it couldn't use its divine power. Even if he killed the ancestral dragon with one slash and successfully imprisoned his dragon soul, the strength that the ancestral dragon's soul could exert would only be at the level of a true god. I'm going to use my blade. The corners of Lin Yuan's mouth curled up slightly. His right hand gripped the hilt of the blade tightly, and his gaze suddenly changed. The warm smile disappeared from his face, and he looked like a lone wolf challenging the position of the leader of a pack of wolves, dangerous and crazy. I'll take you on. Zhao Fuhai sneered. His body moved, and his entire body smashed towards Lin Yuan like a cannonball. The high-speed movement even created a terrifying explosion, causing a group of Heaven Star Realm cultivators nearby to fall off their horses. In the blink of an eye, he was already in front of Lin Yuan. The Abyss Dragon was slowly pushed out of its sheath by Lin Yuan. A snow-white cold light flashed. Zhao Fuhai, who had been so powerful and unstoppable just a second ago, was sent flying backwards at a speed that was 3 times faster than when he came out. Old man, since you've retired, it means that you know in your heart that you're old and can't compete with young people anymore. I've never thought that a martial artist could enter the Tao through martial arts, but once you lose your heart, you'll be crippled. This is true for cultivators, and even more so for martial artists. The Abyss Dragon slowly fell to the side, and red blood flowed down the blade. Lin Yuan shook off the blood beads and sneered, "A cripple shouldn't be thinking about things that you shouldn't be thinking about." Zhao Fuhai smashed down a house, and dust filled the air, blocking everyone's sight. However, it could not block everyone's perception. The spectators could clearly feel that Zhao Fuhai's qi was dropping at a terrifying speed. According to this trend, by the time the dust settled, this martial arts master whose name had shaken the southern green forest would be crippled, if not dead. How is this possible? Someone exclaimed in disbelief. Even though there was a difference in strength between Void Netherworld realm experts, the gap between them shouldn't be so terrifying, right? Just one slash. Zhao Fuhai, who had been famous for many years, actually ended up like this, and old man Zhao didn't even draw his blade. Haha, this is great. It was actually Zhao Fuhai's voice that rang out right after. A huge force smashed down, and the surrounding dust was pushed back into the ruins. Zhao Fuhai's figure gradually appeared, standing with his blade in his hand. A ferocious saber mark spread on his chest. If one looked closely, they could even see the squirming organs under the skin. If it was an ordinary Heavengang realm cultivator, they would have to find someone to treat them immediately. Otherwise, their life would be in danger. Chapter 934. However, old Master Zhao stood up from the ruins with such injuries. He didn't even use his aura energy to suppress the blade marks. Instead, he took out the golden blade that made him famous. Hiss! The sound of people sucking in cold air was heard all around. This old Master Zhao was probably going to fight with his life on the line. So what if he defeated the Empress in this battle with such injuries? Little girl, you're right. Heart is really important. It's the same for cultivators and even more so for warriors. Zhao Fuhai stood up shakily. He carried the 9-foot blade that looked like it was made of gold on his shoulder. He stared at Lin Yuan and grinned. If a kid like you can pass this test, you'll definitely become something in the future. Since that's the case, even if I die, I can't let you live in this world. I remember now. A Heaven's Gang realm cultivator who was watching suddenly slapped his forehead and said in a deep voice, Lijian Village's village Master Zhaoku is old Master Zhao's only son. In the turmoil that swept through the southern forest, Lijian Village was wiped out by the Empress. Even the babies in swaddling clothes were not spared. The Zhao family has always been a single descendant. Old Master Zhao was cut off by the Empress. Lin Yuan was speechless. Well, it was no wonder that the old master wanted to fight with his life on the line. Although it was true that cultivators did not value family ties, they were still the descendants of their own bloodline. They would more or less take care of them. Although those large and flourishing aristocratic families would take revenge for the deaths of their young masters and young ladies, they would still choose to stop if they could not do it. But this Zhao Fuhai was no different from being wiped out by him. Damn, were these so-called heroes of the forest all this kind of trash? As long as the benefits were in place or they were in a killing frenzy, they didn't care about anything else? The relationship between Lijian Village's Zhao Ku and Zhao Fuhai was most likely not a secret. For a force that could be wiped out so easily, it was very difficult for it to survive in a place like the forest where the strong preyed on the weak. Not to mention that Lijian Village still had some reputation. It was most likely because old Master Zhao left behind a shadow in the forest after he washed his hands of gold. They dared to kill this guy? Was there something wrong with their heads? Under everyone's gaze, Zhao Fuhai held the hilt of the golden blade with both hands, closed his eyes, and prepared for a moment. Suddenly, he let out a low roar, and the blade slammed down. In a trance, the blade aura was intertwined, crushing toward Lin Yuan like a landslide. The terrifying power fell, and even the bystanders who were not involved in the fight couldn't help but shrink their necks. Everyone in the southern forest knew that the Golden Blade Dragon King, Zhao Fuhai, had two ultimate skills. One was the Tyrant Blade, and the other was the Blood Dragon. The biggest similarity between the two was that they were incomparably domineering. Once the Golden Blade slashed down, the majestic momentum would smash down. There was no such thing as dodging or not dodging. You could either take the blade head-on or die. There was no third choice. Therefore, Zhao Fuhai was never willing to use his blade when sparring with others. Because once the blade landed, even he couldn't take it back. Zhao Fuhai's Blood Dragon was also a martial arts grandmaster's use of the power of qi and blood. It combined the rich and boundless qi and blood together, as if it could really materialize a blood dragon. It could attack and defend. If one's cultivation wasn't at a certain level, they would be crushed into a pile of meat paste if they faced the blood dragon head-on. But that blood dragon, before it could show off, it was chopped into pieces by the Empress. Of course, if it wasn't for the blood dragon's protection, Zhao Fuhai would have been split into two. If old Master Zhao didn't underestimate the enemy and used the golden blade first, it would have been fine. Someone sighed. Lin Yuan only narrowed his eyes slightly in the face of the great force blade that was smashing down. He stood there motionlessly, as if he was scared silly by the blade force. If an ordinary cultivator was here, they would most likely think so. But Zhao Fuhai shook his head and smiled bitterly. The blade wound on his chest expanded again, and a large amount of blood and organs fell to the ground. His vitality had been completely cut off at this moment. Even a Void Realm expert wouldn't have a chance of surviving such an injury that almost emptied him out. However, other than Zhao Fuhai, only the other 3 Void Realm experts knew that he was smiling bitterly, not because he couldn't see Guan Zhaoshan being killed in one strike, but because even if he put his life on the line, he most likely wouldn't succeed. Because the moment Lin Yuan narrowed his eyes, they could acutely sense a blade force that wasn't any weaker than Zhao Fuhai's rising from Guan Zhaoshan's body. Although he hadn't made a move yet, the two blade forces still appeared to be like a deep abyss and a high mountain. Gulp. Lu Jingsheng swallowed a mouthful of saliva and said vaguely, "How old is this little girl?" Her blade Dao has already reached a level where she can stand shoulder to shoulder with Brother Zhao? Impossible, this is absolutely impossible. Not shoulder to shoulder, it's crushing. Su Huchan shook his head and refuted Lu Jingsheng's words. He said in a deep voice, "Zhao Fuhai's strike is indeed terrifying. Even I wouldn't dare to say that I can take it. But don't forget that Zhao Fuhai left the martial world to comprehend this blade Dao back then. He cultivated his blade Dao at home, and that's why he has this blade Dao today. But that Empress wasn't prepared at all. She put all her effort into this blade Dao and it's on par with her. How can there be such a huge gap between them? Even at this time, she won't let us escape unscathed. What's the point of deceiving ourselves?" Lu Jingsheng and Li Ran didn't say anything, but they looked a little unhappy. Even for cultivators who were extremely fast, it was impossible for them to learn more about someone just because of some rumors. The last time Guan Zhaoshan appeared, she was only at the peak of the airborne realm. Even if she was really a genius, it was already the limit for her to reach the late heaven strength realm. Therefore, when they learned that someone from the top wanted to kill Guan Zhaoshan, except for Su Huchan, who was really close, the other three deliberately rushed over to kill Guan Zhaoshan before anyone else. First of all, if this matter was done well, it would be a great show in the eyes of the cultivators in the south in the future. Second of all, the Empress arsenal left behind by Guan Zhaoshan was rich enough to move any first-rate force. It was just that they couldn't take it for the sake of their reputation. But for these rogue cultivators who didn't have a sect background, there was no pressure to do such a thing. As long as they could get their hands on the Empress arsenal, it would still be a great merit. Moreover, after getting their hands on the Empress arsenal, their hands would be stained with oil. When the time came, they could pick a few unreserved cultivation methods and martial arts techniques from the Empress arsenal to take away, which would be treasures that could be passed down through generations. But who would have thought that Guan Zhaoshan's current cultivation had become so tyrannical? Chapter 935. However, things had already developed to this point, and there was no point in complaining. Zhao Fuhai's cultivation level was not considered weak among the four, especially when he used the blade that he had been accumulating for many years. Even they had to temporarily avoid it. Therefore, the problem now was not how to kill Guan Zhaoshan and obtain the secrets of the Empress arsenal, but how the three of them could survive from the terrifying Guan Zhaoshan. Not to mention anything else, they had to at least hold on until the Kongming realm powerhouses from other places arrived. By then, they might be able to fight Guan Zhaoshan if they worked together. Who's next? Lin Yuan tightened his grip on the hilt of the blade in his hand and looked away from the miserable corpse with a sneer. It was as if the one who had just died to him was not a master who had been famous in the southern cultivation world for a long time, but a Real chicken and pottery dog. This is a tough one. Fellow Taoist Li, fellow Taoist Su, how about we fight together? As the shame of the Kongming realm, Lu Jingsheng did not have any psychological burden and directly said in public. Anyway, his reputation in the south was bad enough. Even mortal evolution and airborne realm cultivators sneered when they heard about this Kongming realm senior, instead of being respectful as they should have been. Under such circumstances, Lu Jingsheng naturally would not do something like risking his life for reputation. On the other hand, Li Ran and Su Huchan looked hesitant at this moment, as if they were silently discussing something. No matter how amazing this Empress was, perhaps it would take another 5 or 10 years for her to have the momentum to dominate the southern cultivation world. However, who would have thought that in just a few months, Guan Zhaoshan's cultivation level had risen from the peak of the airborne realm to the Kongming realm? This could no longer be described as a heavenly genius or a monstrous genius. This was simply a miracle. If they had known that Guan Zhaoshan was such a terrifying existence, even if they were despised by the southern cultivation world, they would have obediently stayed in their own places. They would never have come to Zhulu City to look for trouble with Guan Zhaoshan. However, although that was the case, it was true that the situation was more powerful than the person. Guan Zhaoshan had reappeared in the south. Although she had yet to make a move, everyone realized that this person was a great enemy. Thus, countless experts moved at once, wanting to suppress Guan Zhaoshan before she could show her edge. Dividing up the female emperor's arsenal was a must, but everyone knew that the method should not be passed on. Since Guan Zhaoshan could casually take out the female emperor's arsenal to drive the southern individual cultivators, according to the usual thinking, Guan Zhaoshan must have something more precious in his hands. Otherwise, those who wanted to invade the southern Shenwu dynasty and establish themselves as kings would not have so much power to make the entire southern cultivation circle take action. Therefore, the thoughts of the southern cultivation world were as clear as day. Guan Zhaoshan could naturally guess what they were thinking. No matter what the outcome of the battle was, there would be no end to it. As long as they fought, it would only end when one side completely killed the other. Now, even if the three of them wanted to retreat, they had to see if Guan Zhaoshan was willing or not. The female emperor's invincible power has really opened my eyes. Li Ran rolled his eyes. Suddenly, he smiled and said, "But even if the empress is peerless, she can't defeat the entire southern cultivation world by herself, can she? In my opinion, why don't we just let this go? When the three of us leave, we will definitely help the female emperor become famous. What do you think? Now you don't want to use seniority to pressure me?" Lin Yuan laughed and did not answer the question. However, the Yuan Long did not return to its sheath, which already showed his attitude. "You must be joking, female emperor. In the path of cultivation, the one who reaches the top is the teacher. Seniority is a common custom of mortals. How can it restrict us true cultivators? Previously, I was ignorant and made a fool of myself." Li Ran's smile did not change, but there was a hint of fear in his eyes. The corners of Lin Yuan's mouth rose slightly, and the abyss dragon slashed down, completely shattering the blade light that Zhao Fuhai had desperately slashed out. Only then did he say, "I naturally won't bother with you. If it were you, would you bother with a dead person? Guan Zhaoshan, do you really think we are afraid of you?" Li Ran's expression suddenly changed. He unsheathed the 3-foot-long sword at his waist and said coldly, "You may have defeated Zhao Fuhai, and your cultivation is considered top-notch in the southern cultivation world. However, 2 fists are no match for 4 hands. Do you still think you can win against the 3 of us?" "Ha!" Under the endless killing intent, Lin Yuan laughed wantonly. After a while, Lin Yuan pointed his blade at Li Ran and said with a smile, "When we first met, you tried to pressure me with your status as a senior. You wanted to defeat me without a fight, but you were slapped in the face. Now you know you are no match for me. You said that the common customs of mortals cannot restrict true cultivators. All these fancy words, you just want the 3 of us to come at you together, right? Why bother? In the end, you are just a brothel keeper. They do business with mortals, you do business with cultivators. You want to be a whore and still want a monument to your chastity. Do you think everyone in the world is blind?" "You!" Li Ran shouted angrily. His aura surged as if he was about to attack Lin Yuan. "Wake up!" Su Huchan, who had been silent all this time, suddenly took a step forward in the void. With a shout, the Buddhist chanting instantly suppressed the dense blood aura around him. Under the auspicious golden Buddhist light, Li Ran's expression gradually calmed down. Buddhism was best at bewitching the mind, no different from the devil sect. But in any case, while Buddhism had selfish motives, there were also those who sincerely followed Buddhism and did good in the world. Lin Yuan had used words to provoke Li Ran's anger, but he was countered by a Buddhist disciple like Su Huchan. Otherwise, if Li Ran had attacked, Lin Yuan could have killed one of them and the remaining 2 were no longer a concern. Although Lin Yuan had a special constitution and his strength was far above that of cultivators of the same level, without using the power of Joss flames and the techniques of his body, Lin Yuan knew that he was no match for the 3 Void Realm cultivators working together. Perhaps he could kill 1 or 2 of them, but the victor would not be him. He was here today to show off his might, not to fight with his life on the line. Under the illumination of the Buddhist light, Li Ran regained her calm. When she looked at Lin Yuan again, she was already drenched in cold sweat. She had undoubtedly just walked through the gates of hell. Benefactor Guan's cultivation is sky-high. I know I am no match for Benefactor Guan, but if the three of us work together to fight you, the result is self-evident. Su Huchan looked straight at Guan Zhaoshan and murmured, "Today, Zhao Fuhai died because of his own hatred. This is karma. We are outsiders and have no right to tell you what to do. But at this time, the rest is between Benefactor Guan and the three of us. I do not wish to fight, so I ask Benefactor Guan to lay down a path. What will it take for you to let us go?" Chapter 936. Hi, you said it yourself. You're not involved in this matter. Zhao Fuhai can find me because we have a grudge against each other. But if the three of you don't have a reason to find trouble with me, then you're wrong. In my eyes, there are many ways to admit one's wrongs, but it's nothing more than an apology. Lin Yuan tilted his head and the smile on his face disappeared. He paused and said coldly, "Kneel down and admit your wrongs, then I'll let this matter go." "If I kneel down and admit my wrongs, will you really let me go?" Without waiting for Su Huchan to speak, Lu Jingsheng's voice had already sounded. Although the onlookers' mouths twitched, no one was surprised. Lu Jingsheng did not have a good reputation in the cultivation world of the South. No matter what happened, he would always take part in it. However, he would always just cheer from the side. If you asked him to fight for a future with his life on the line, he would never do it. In short, this person would only take advantage of others. When it was time to fight for his life, he would definitely be the first to betray his teammates. However, being able to reach the Void Realm, Lu Jingsheng was not without any redeeming qualities. For example, his foresight was quite shrewd. After all, when the Lei clan rebelled, it was almost a disaster. Back then, the Jiao clan could be considered to have produced many talents. In terms of cultivation, the Jiao clan Sword King alone could stop Lei Qiusheng's army. One sword could destroy 100,000 soldiers. In terms of military strategy, no one would forget that the Wanjian dynasty had a military god who was as famous as Lei Qiusheng. Moreover, the Wanjian dynasty had been passed down for many years. How could the little Lei clan compare? However, in the southern cultivation world, only Lu Jingsheng's family from the Twin Blades sect came out and cheered for Lei Qiusheng's actions. Although in the end, they did not do anything and missed the opportunity to help him become a dragon, becoming the source of ridicule for him. However, every time this matter was brought up, ordinary people would treat it as a joke. However, the wise ones would be terrified. No one dared to underestimate Lu Jingsheng. Everyone knew that Lu Jingsheng had missed the opportunity to help the Twin Blades sect rise to power. Not only did the Twin Blades sect's position in the south not rise, it was even dragged down by Lu Jingsheng. Their reputation was getting worse day by day. Now, even when they recruited disciples, they had to rely on swindling. Those who were accepted into the sect were almost all leftovers from other sections. However, only a few people knew that since the divine martial emperor came to power, he had spared no effort in attacking the sections. Lei Qiusheng couldn't touch the super, first-class, or second-class sects in the south. Or it could be said that the price was too high, so he couldn't touch them for the time being. However, the second-rate sects and below had long since been massacred by Lei Qiusheng. They had been replaced again and again. Only the Twin Blades sect, which Lu Jingsheng presided over, had been obediently staying in the south, maintaining a half-dead appearance. Most of the fellow Taoists who had mocked him for his lack of courage back then were already dead. No one would think that Lu Jingsheng was a wolf in sheep's clothing. Similarly, no one would deny that Lu Jingsheng was a wise man. He had long predicted that the corrupt Wanjian dynasty would be replaced by Lei Qiusheng. He had also predicted that Lei Qiusheng would massacre the sects in the future to consolidate his imperial power. This void netherworld realm expert, who had been ridiculed for most of his life, had misjudged Guan Zhaoshan's strength in one thing. However, after Guan Zhaoshan had made his decision, he was the first person to let go of his so-called face and burdens. Although he had never had those things before, it was fine. Although the heroes of the world are not gathered in Zhulu City, the people here today, regardless of their previous intentions, are all famous figures in the cultivation world in the south. I, Guan Zhaoshan, will have a foothold in the south. Since I have said it in front of everyone, I won't be two-faced. Lin Yuan's face was serious as he repeated, kneel down and admit your mistake, then I'll let it go. Lu Jingsheng, I'm ashamed to be in the same group as you. Li Ran's eyes flashed as she transmitted her voice secretly. Lu Jingsheng's expression didn't change as he replied, I'm the one who's ashamed to be in the same group as a brainless person like you. If you still can't see what the Empress wants, then you deserve to die here. Li Ran? Li Ran's face was filled with confusion. Putting herself in Guan Zhaoshen's shoes, she had been targeted by the Southern Cultivation Forces with ulterior motives not long after she had appeared. At this time, she had to make a name for herself so that no one would come looking for her. Although it wasn't troublesome, Guan Zhaoshen wasn't so free as to take out so much time every day to deal with these small fries. Killing Zhao Fuhai with one strike might have been Guan Zhaoshen's full-strength attack. No one could be sure if Guan Zhaoshen could kill another Void Realm expert. However, the three of them weren't willing to bet on whether Guan Zhaoshen had this ability. It was better to follow Guan Zhaoshen's wishes and kneel down to admit their mistakes to help her make a name for herself. First of all, today's situation wasn't easy to resolve. If they really fought, the three of them would definitely be injured or killed. None of them would be able to gain anything, and it would only benefit the latecomers. If they retreated now, they could still wait for the truly powerful cultivators to appear in Zhulu City to fight with Guan Zhaoshen. At that time, one of the two tigers would definitely be injured or killed. Second of all, after today's matter, the Empress's might would be unstoppable. If she could really survive this disaster, the Southern Cultivation World would have the title of Empress in the future. In troubled times, with the Red Dust Association and Grand Essence Association as her foundation, she might really be able to establish her own territory and confront the Black Jiao on the northern frontier. Now that they had done her a favor, they would definitely benefit from it in the future. Third of all, although the three of them had suffered a setback and lost face, the latecomers wouldn't give up so easily. When Guan Zhaoshen killed or defeated more and more powerful cultivators, the fact that they had to kneel down to admit their mistakes would gradually fade away. Even if the situation developed to that stage, Guan Zhaoshen, who was the first to face them, would be able to keep her life and would instead help to increase their fame. After telling Li Ran and Su Huchan his thoughts through secret voice sending, Lu Jingsheng sneered and said, If you two don't want to lose face, then please leave. Under the eye of God, everything could be seen clearly. There was no strange power here to block Lin Yuan's perception. Since Lu Jingsheng had used secret voice sending, he naturally couldn't hide it from Lin Yuan. After all, the secret voice sending in the world of heaven and martial arts was different from the untainted land. The secret voice sending in the untainted land was a kind of magic. Like all living things having spirits, the two sides could directly communicate with each other through their consciousness. Unless it was a powerful cultivator, no one could secretly sneak into the other's consciousness to eavesdrop on their conversation. However, the secret voice sending in the world of heaven and martial arts was just a kind of superficial sound production technique. By opening and closing their lips slightly to speak, and then using their gang qi to expand their voice and transmission channels, they could ensure that only their target could hear their words. Comparing the two, the latter was as superficial as comparing the martial arts of mortals with the magic of immortals. Chapter 937. Everyone had underestimated Lu Jingsheng. If he did not hide his abilities, he would not be inferior to Li Zhong. Being cautious and steady might be criticized by others, but it was definitely the best strategy. Lin Yuan could easily give two examples. In his previous life, after the Three Kingdoms War, Sima Yi forcefully killed Chao Wei and took over the world. During the Warring States period in Japan, Tokugawa Ieyasu had killed Oda Nobunaga and Toyotomi Hideyoshi to take over the world. However, when Lu Jingsheng landed from midair and squatted down slightly, Lin Yuan's beautiful face once again raised a smile, losing the initial warm feeling. Those onlookers just glanced at Lin Yuan at this time, and couldn't help but turn their heads away, not daring to look directly at him. That kind of smile inexplicably gave people a cold and murderous feeling, as if under this kind of smile, everyone present was guilty. Lu Jingsheng, who was half kneeling on the ground, suddenly raised his head. he tapped the ground with the tip of his foot and suddenly exerted force. A black and a white dual saber appeared in his hands. In an instant, he turned into a stream of light and charged toward Lin Yuan. Li ran and Su Huchan's eyes lit up. Based on Lu Jingsheng's usual style, it would not be surprising if he knelt there today. However, he said that he would admit defeat while waving his saber at Lin Yuan. That was the most unexpected thing. Lu Jingsheng's dual sabers were probably made of special materials. Lin Yuan's thick gang qi could not even block them for a moment. Two snow-white saber radiances had already slashed toward Lin Yuan's throat. Clang. The sound of metal clashing could be heard. Lu Jingsheng's face flashed with joy. He looked at the Yuan Long in front of the dual sabers that were in the shape of an X, and a trace of doubt flashed in his eyes. Too slow. At this moment, Lin Yuan, who was standing in place without moving, was still smiling, but waves of red light surged out from the depths of his eyes. Lin Yuan's special constitution, combined with the blood-boiling technique, had caused his base stats to soar to a terrifying level. Even if a peak Void Realm cultivator tried to kill him, he had an 80% chance of blocking them, let alone Lu Jingsheng, who was only at the 3rd tier of the Void Realm. The Abyss Dragon twisted like a hidden dragon turning its body. With a flash of saber light, the black and white short sabers broke. How is this possible? Lu Jingsheng lowered his head in a daze and looked at the arm that had pierced through his chest. Dark red blood kept flowing out of the corner of his mouth. His sneak attack had failed, his treasured saber had been broken, and even his heart had been grasped by someone else. But how could this be? How could this woman react so quickly? Just what level had her strength reached? Are these your last words? I'll answer you. Lin Yuan's expression didn't change, but his eyes were filled with a coldness that didn't match his smile. He said, "Because you're too weak. Whether it's a sneak attack or a forceful attack, the outcome has already been decided." As soon as his voice fell, Lin Yuan clenched Lu Jingsheng's heart tightly. His aura shield shook, and the beating heart suddenly burst. Immediately, the aura shield exploded and completely tore Lu Jingsheng's entire upper body into pieces. It was so clean and neat that it made people tremble with fear. "So, it's your turn?" The Abyss Dragon in Lin Yuan's hand pointed diagonally to the ground, and the aura energy circulated to evaporate the blood on his body. He said with a smile, "The people who gathered here today are all here for me. Some want to kill me to make a name for themselves, and some covet the Empress arsenal. So, I won't hold back. From now on, run. Whoever I catch up with will die." Damn it, crazy. The onlookers couldn't help but change their expressions slightly. Lin Yuan was right. They did come with their own goals. However, after seeing Lin Yuan's strength, some of them might want to wait for Lin Yuan and the 4 Kongming realm experts to be injured before picking up the loot. However, most of them didn't have that luxury anymore. Even so, this woman still didn't want to let them go. Rogue cultivators from the south, listen up. The head of an airborne realm expert starts at 100 points, and 100 points will be added for every level higher. The head of a Heaven Strength realm expert starts at 1,500 points, and 300 points will be added for every level higher. Lin Yuan grinned and dragged the Abyss Dragon toward Li Ran and Su Huchan. At the same time, he waved his hand gently and added, "As for those of you who are being hunted, take the heads of 3 of your companions. Regardless of your level, as long as you can bring them back to the Red Dust Tavern alive, I'll let bygones be bygones." Crazy. Su Huchan's expression changed, and he subconsciously scolded angrily. Although he was a butcher known as Blood Buddha, and had always stopped killing by killing in the south, he never thought that there would be someone as evil as Lin Yuan, who didn't hide at all and directly put a bounty on the heads of the participants. The most outrageous thing was the last sentence, which almost instantly divided the participants who could have been united. After all, no one could guarantee that their comrades wouldn't suddenly go crazy and take their heads in exchange for their safety. In other words, the allure of the Empress Armory was right there, and no one in the entire southern cultivation world dared to say that they didn't want it. It was just that they didn't have a reason to enter the Red Dust Tavern before. Now that there was an opportunity, how could they not seize it? The ones who were the most excited were the rogue cultivators of the forest who had originally planned to come and help Lin Yuan. The rule of 2 kills and 2 deaths was out in the open. The local cultivators of Zhulu City had experienced the era when Guan Zhaoshan killed those who disobeyed his orders, so they naturally didn't dare to violate the rule. Among the foreign cultivators and warriors, most of them, except for the 2 idiots who were killed by Guan Zhaoshan 3 days ago, were smart people. When they first came to this place, they were all particular about doing as the Romans did. They already knew all the rules, taboos, and people they needed to visit. Therefore, if they wanted to earn points, most of them still had to kill those monsters and the remnants of the demonic sect. However, those 2 were difficult to deal with, and there were too many wolves for the meat, so there was simply not enough meat to go around. This time, the Empress was so generous that each head of an airborne realm level 1 was worth at least 100 points. Wouldn't that make them go crazy? After all, they were there to deal with those people in the first place. After receiving the reward, they had adjusted their state from trying their best to fighting with their lives on the line. That day would be known as the Empress Show of Might by later generations of cultivators. 4 Void Realm cultivators, thousands of Celestial Strength Realm cultivators, and tens of thousands of Airborne Realm cultivators were all hunted down by the Southern Forest for over a month. When the statistics were tallied, they were shocked to find that none of those people had made it out of Zhulu City alive. It was only then that the title Empress changed from a derisive and disdainful nickname to a respectful title from the Southern cultivators. Chapter 938. Perhaps only now did some people remember that Guan Zhaoshan's previous nickname was Grim Demon. As the old saying went, parents might give you the wrong name, but the pugilistic world would never give you the wrong nickname. In the past, Guan Zhaoshan single-handedly killed her way through Zhulu City, killing the Lulin itinerant cultivators who came together. She even attracted the power of the Ether Society and gradually became known as Grim Demon. With the unwillingness of the Southern regime and Guan Zhaoshan's attitude of unifying the Southern Lulin, the title of Empress was born. Who would have thought that this young girl, who was previously unknown and forced into a corner by the Southern regime in the Flying Star sect, would suddenly show the bearing of a peerless hero not long after she stayed in the Red Dust Inn and was called Emperor by others. Under the Empress's command, the Southern itinerant cultivators rose up. Just this matter alone made the entire Southern cultivation world tremble in fear. Why did the Southern itinerant cultivators not hesitate to fall out with the major sects and aristocratic families to work for the Empress? Because of the benefits. In the past, these Southern itinerant cultivators could not be compared to the disciples of the major sects and aristocratic families. However, most of them did not have status or fated opportunities. If these itinerant cultivators could rise from the bottom of the pugilistic world and become famous in the Southern cultivation world, they would be more outstanding than most of the disciples of the major sects and aristocratic families if they had enough resources and techniques. And Guan Zhaoshan's appearance gave them enough of this benefit. Want resources? Want techniques? Use heads to exchange for them. Those who broke the Empress's rules could be killed. Those who were enemies of the Empress could be killed. Carrying these heads to Zhulu City to exchange for points, then using the points to exchange for the resources and techniques one needed, it was simple to say. Most of the guilds operated in a similar way, obtaining the corresponding rewards through various missions. It was unknown how many cultivators and warriors were supported. However, the Empress's generosity was too great. The number of martial arts techniques and techniques stored in the Empress's arsenal was as many as the stars in the sky. As long as one opened the threshold of cultivation, they could choose suitable techniques from the shedding to the Kongming realm. If one exchanged for a complete set, the members of the Red Dust Society would give some tips on cultivation, such as when and where to cultivate the technique, how to pair it with spiritual items, and so on. This strike was not inferior to Black Jiao's plan to reform the northern frontier. This was because this strike also struck the foundation of the aristocratic families and sections. After losing the advantage of cultivation techniques and resources, it might not be obvious in a year or two, but in 5 or 10 years, the cultivators of the South might not be the same as they were today. However, what frightened the sects and aristocratic families the most was that the Empress seemed to be spreading benefits from the beginning. She used countless techniques, martial arts, and spiritual items to exchange for useless heads, but unknowingly became the biggest beneficiary. Now, no one doubted that as long as the Empress gave the order, all the southern individual cultivators would tear apart and devour all the enemies in front of her like hungry wolves. Moreover, mastering the techniques of the southern individual cultivators was equivalent to mastering their weaknesses. Once they became enemies, the Empress could see the flaws and weaknesses of the southern individual cultivators at a glance and take corresponding measures. Furthermore, through a series of techniques, she could firmly control the individual cultivators who had the potential to enter the Kongming realm and above. After all, many techniques that could be cultivated to the Kongming realm could be seen in the Empress's hands. In other words, the subsequent cultivation methods of those techniques were actually in the Empress's hands. If one wanted to obtain the complete technique, he would have to bet half his life in the Empress's hands first. It was too big of a deal to learn. This was what the southern sects and aristocratic families were most vexed about. The existence of the Empress's arsenal had already broken their control of superior techniques, so they joined forces to kill the Empress. It was not purely to suppress the Empress's momentum of sweeping the south and establishing a new regime. More importantly, who would not be jealous of the Empress's current power? However, although they were jealous, it was impossible for them to learn from the Empress and open the library to recruit the southern individual cultivators. After all, the techniques that the sects and aristocratic families cultivated were passed down in their families. Once it was made public, it would be equivalent to exposing their own weaknesses, and their destruction would be imminent. But what if it was not made public? To put it bluntly, even if the southern sects and aristocratic families joined forces, as long as the guardian of the heavenly gate was not involved, so what if they built an arsenal together? That might not be as good as the Empress's arsenal. If it was made public, how could it not be made public? At the same time, Lin Yuan, who was sitting in the Red Dust Inn, yawned in boredom. This was the 10th day since he returned to the south. The situation was still unclear, so he was still unable to leave. The 4 Kongming realm experts had died at the hands of Guan Zhaoshan. Although it was a deterrent, it was not enough to stop all the challengers from advancing. The real reason why they did not dare to step into Zhulu City was that Lin Yuan had previously threatened to let the southern individual cultivators hunt down and kill the participants. His method of making the participants kill each other was too vicious. It was equivalent to announcing one thing: you can find trouble with me in Zhulu City, but remember one thing. Once you come, both sides can only fight to the death. There was no such thing as stopping when it came to a fight. The south was actually one of the few places in the Shenwu dynasty that had not been seriously affected by the flames of war. After all, it was close to the Qingjiang Empire, which was not good at land battles. After the Shenwu dynasty was officially destroyed and the Sky Demon was born, the Baixing Navy did not take the opportunity to attack. Instead, they took the initiative to shoulder a portion of the defense line, reducing the pressure on the south. Although the Frost Mirror Barbarian had planned to go south, they did not have enough time. They were first stabbed in the back by the northern frontier. Then, they bumped into the most elite army of the Shenwu dynasty, Shenlin Jun. After the Sky Demon was born, they had no choice but to leave the Frost Mirror grassland with their tails between their legs. Until now, they had not recovered. Therefore, the ones who caused chaos in the south were actually only the rebel army at the beginning and the overseas devil sect later on. Even the demonic beasts of the Endless Sea were badly battered by the former rulers and had no time to care about them. Thus, the various forces in the south were still well preserved. There were many Kongming realm experts who were truly powerful. Even without the intervention of the Heavenly Gate Guardian, they had enough power to deal with Lin Yuan. However, it was one thing to have the power to deal with Lin Yuan, but it was another thing to have the courage to enter Zhulu City. Lin Yuan now had the attitude that he would not rest until he was dead. This made the Southerners, who were used to stopping at a certain point, extremely uncomfortable. They coveted the Empress' arsenal, but they did not dare to fight to the death with the Empress. In fact, Many of the great practitioners who had already set off quietly returned to their cave abodes to undergo closed-door cultivation. They acted as if they did not care about worldly affairs, as if they were not tempted at all. Chapter 939. Lord Dragon King, I have good news and bad news. Which one do you want to hear first? The travel-worn Taoist Red Dust strode into the Red Dust Tavern, picked up a cup of tea on the counter, and drank it all in one gulp. Lin Yuan slightly shifted his gaze. He didn't say anything, but his gaze carried an invisible pressure. Taoist Red Dust pondered for a moment, then slowly said, "The good news is that the 4 Void Realm experts were defeated here. Now, most of the challengers have already returned home, unwilling to get involved in this matter. Even if those aristocratic families and sects are hopping mad, they can't do anything about it. They can only remove the blockade on you. In other words, unless someone is determined to fight us, they will have to let you in and out of the city." However, they put forward a condition. After pausing for a moment, Taoist Red Dust looked over at the group of loose cultivators who were eating and drinking. He then continued, "They invited a powerful demonic beast from the endless sea. They said that as long as you can defeat that demonic beast, they won't say a word even if you really become the Emperor of the South. However, if you can't win, they will have to make the Empress arsenal public and let every sect and aristocratic family make a copy of it. *CK. Give them face?" A bad-tempered loose cultivator smashed the wine cup in his hand and roared, "Our Zhulu city doesn't want to be enemies with them. We only want to strangle the demonic beasts and demonic sect that are wreaking havoc in the south. They are the ones who are afraid of the Empress, so they joined forces to form an encirclement around us. Now that they feel that something is difficult to deal with, they don't obediently come and apologize. Instead, they are still thinking about the Empress arsenal? The wine cups in the Wujing official kiln, the kind that comes in a set. If you break one of them, the whole set will be destroyed. The price will be 600 taels of gold, or an 80-year-old spiritual item. Tell me, how do you want to compensate? If you can't afford it, you can pay with points." The innkeeper's voice sounded faintly. The novice cultivator who smashed the wine cup was slightly startled. He looked at the broken porcelain on the ground and then looked at his empty right hand. His face was so ugly that it was as if he had swallowed a fly. Lin Yuan, on the other hand, slowly sat up from his prone position on the counter. Little by little, he straightened his back and said with a smile, "Although the words are dirty, they are indeed reasonable. If they want my things, they will come and find trouble with me. Although such rules are in line with the face of the aristocratic families and sects, the game has never been played in such a way. How about this? Spread the word that it is fine to find demonic beasts to battle with me, but if a clan participates, they will have to obediently sign their names. If I lose, I will give the great Empress arsenal to them." After a pause, the abyss dragon hummed in the scabbard. Lin Yuan's murderous voice sounded again, "Kill their entire family." This, Taoist Hongchen was slightly taken aback. Then he cupped his fists and said in a deep voice, "Yes. This subordinate will do it right away." Taoist Hongchen was also a quick-witted person. Although he might not be a schemer, he still had basic logical thinking. Combined with the Dragon King's operations in the northern frontier, he was afraid that the Empress who used the banner of Guanzhaoshan was really interested in the rich south. Sects and aristocratic families were existences that must be eliminated and weakened. If the Dragon King did not want the south, he could have just laughed off such an unreasonable request. However, that murderous sentence showed the Dragon King's absolute ambition at this moment. "It's rare to have some fun. Today's expenses will be on my head." Lin Yuan waved his hand gently. His handsome face was full of smiles. Then he stood up and walked upstairs. Taoist Hongchen stood in place and thought for a moment. Then he followed him upstairs. When the array on the second floor was activated, blocking the spying and eavesdropping of the rogue cultivators downstairs, he said worriedly, "This subordinate understands Lord Dragon King's intention. However, the 2 demonic beasts they invited to fight with you this time are not easy to deal with. One of them is called DG. Its true form is a white-headed crow. I'm not sure about its cultivation and ability, but it's one of the 12 demonic pillars under the demon venerable. It's the person in charge of the village of warmth and tenderness, so it can be considered the demon venerable's right-hand man. The meaning behind Taoist Hong Chen's words was very simple. There was no need to talk about the strength of the white-headed crow called DG for now. Just the fact that it was backed by the demon venerable and was in charge of the village of warmth and tenderness was enough to make Lin Yuan wary. What else? Lin Yuan asked with a cold face as he walked to his room. With the reputation of the southern cultivation world, it's most likely impossible to invite a great demon like DG. The other one is Emota. His background is also extraordinary. He's an extremely close and important subordinate of the exotic cultivator from overseas. He's been roaming the south for more than 10 years and is at the peak of the desolate demon realm. It's said that he's already touched the threshold of the next realm. I wonder how much they've paid this time to invite such a great demon. Taoist Hong Chen pursed his lips. His face was a little gloomy. Got it? Tell them that I'll accept the challenge. Let them arrange the time and place. I'll be there on time. Lin Yuan nodded expressionlessly. Then he stepped into his room and closed the door behind him. It was hard to say why Emota would help the southern cultivation world, but at present, he was sure that his identity was most likely no longer a secret. The demon venerable who had encircled the demon kingdom of the southern wilderness with one palm sent a great demon, DG, to the south with the purpose of giving him a warning. Otherwise, after the village of warmth and tenderness wanted to open a branch in the northern frontier but was rejected by Li Zhong, both sides had been very unhappy. How could it be so coincidental that the one who was looking for trouble was the person in charge of the village of warmth and tenderness? The road ahead of this trip was already uncertain. Now, with the addition of the demon venerable of the southern wilderness, many unforeseen events had occurred. Even Lin Yuan couldn't help but feel a little troubled at this moment. However, there was still good news. After all, the great demon named Emota was a demonic beast that the exotic cultivator relied on. If the relationship was handled properly, it might save him a lot of trouble. This period of time could not be considered a complete waste. Soon after, the news that the Empress had accepted the challenge quickly spread from Zhulu City. Under the pressure brought by Lin Yuan, the entire southern cultivation world's aristocratic families and sects were almost speechless. They were indeed unreasonable in this matter, but they were obviously unwilling to see the Empress's arsenal not get a share of the loot. However, the problem was that if they participated in this game, it would be fine if they won, but the consequences of losing were simply unimaginable. Whether it was the Empress or the Killing Demon, these two titles did not conflict. At this moment, no one doubted that Guan Zhao's words of killing the entire family was just a simple threat. This was because in the past period of time, many people had used facts to prove that he was indeed a man of his words. On the 15th day, Lin Yuan went to the coastal Zhangyue city. Countless busybodies flocked there just to catch a glimpse of the Empress. Chapter 940. On the 15th day, Lin Yuan went to Zhangyue city along the coast. Countless busybodies flocked there just to catch a glimpse of the Empress. Taoist Hong Chen stood beside Lin Yuan and said expressionlessly, "Although I don't know what the Dragon King has prepared, I've asked around and found out that the earthly self is extremely insidious. It has a special talent that can make people's hair turn white overnight. It seems to be able to control time. Dragon King, please be careful." "That's fine," Lin Yuan said in a low voice as he walked. Although the demon tribe in the southern wilderness is one of the 3 great demon tribes in the world, their methods and cultivation system are different from the Endless Sea and the Hengduan Mountains. Compared to the demonic beasts who cultivate themselves, both humans and demons in the southern wilderness prefer to refine all kinds of goo to fight enemies and heal injuries. Find out what kind of goo this earthly self has and how to deal with it. We'll talk about other things when you're ready. Taoist Hong Chen cupped his hands and left again. Whoosh! The sound of something breaking through the air was heard. Lin Yuan's expression changed slightly. He took 3 steps back and unsheathed the yuan long with a clang. The sword qi turned into a stream of light and collided with the black stream of light. The black stream of light made a strange squeaking sound after colliding with the yuan long. The two collided a few more times and did not succeed. The black stream of light decisively gave up the fight with the Yuanlong and returned to the gate of Zhangye City. The Empress knows a lot about the southern wilderness. Unfortunately, you didn't have the chance to prepare something to restrain my goo. On the city gate tower, a black crow with a white head fluttered its wings and flew up, swallowing the black light into its stomach. Then, its body began to expand abruptly. When it reached the size of an adult, it stopped expanding its ordinary wings and maintained its body shape. It said with a smile, "I heard that Empress fought 4 Kongming realm warriors alone in Deer Chasing City that day. After that battle, she almost destroyed half of Deer Chasing City. Although I don't dare to say that I will win today, I won't lose to Empress easily either. How about we fight outside the city?" The Abyss Dragon circled around Lin Yuan twice. Under the control of his Gang Qi, it flew back into the scabbard and made a crisp sound. After that, Lin Yuan's right hand gently touched his waist and threw the 4 heads to DG. He said, "This is our first meeting. I didn't bring anything good for DG's demon pillar. Take these 4 heads and feed them to your treasure." DG's eyes were gloomy and cruel. He didn't catch them and let the 4 heads roll to the ground. The faces that had been cleaned were covered with dust again. However, everyone could still recognize them. They were Li Ran, Lu Jingsheng, Zhao Fuhai, and Su Huchun. Hiss! Someone gasped and murmured, "This Empress is serious." 4 Nethervoid realm cultivators were nothing to the cultivation world of the south, but they were usually big shots. This Empress didn't hold back and beheaded them one by one. Then she used lime and other materials to make them into corpses and carried them all the way to Zhangye City. She gave everyone a show of strength at the beginning of the battle. The one that was the most shocked was DG from the southern wilderness. Because it was the next opponent of the Empress. If it was defeated by the Empress, DG's head would be in danger. DG flapped its wings and instantly, there was a burst of giggling sounds. Countless poisonous insects drilled out from the ground and surrounded Lin Yuan like a tide. It was as if the sun had set and the night had gradually covered the earth. Many female cultivators who came to Zhangye City to watch the battle were pale. After all, although most of these poisonous insects were ordinary beasts, they were chosen as raw materials for raising venomous insects. Naturally, they were fierce and violent. Therefore, they didn't look good. Most of them were missing limbs. Even when they were wriggling towards Lin Yuan, some poisonous insects were fighting and eating each other. In terms of intimidation, the 4 human heads paled in comparison to the ground full of poisonous insects. "Is that all you've got?" Lin Yuan raised his eyelids and the Abyss Dragon came out of its sheath again. It circled around Lin Yuan and a powerful Gang Qi fell, instantly forming a 3-foot wide ring. Endless Gang Qi and saber radiance gushed out from the crack. Any poisonous insect that came in contact with it was instantly torn apart. Although these poisonous insects were only a small part of the black tide, the saber light and Gang Qi did not weaken in the slightest. They maintained the frequency of their output, constantly strangling the seemingly endless black tide. This southern wilderness venomous insect art is just SOS. It just looks scary, right? A rogue cultivator from the south who came along smacked his lips and looked at the white-haired crow on the city tower with a mocking expression. "Shut up." Taoist Red Dust's face was not optimistic at all. There were not many rogue cultivators from the south who came with Lin Yuan. In order to guard against people with ulterior motives, almost all of them were members of the Red Dust Society who knew each other well. Their cultivation and vision were ordinary, so naturally, they could not see the subtlety of this southern wilderness venomous insect art. But he was different. He could clearly see that the endless black tide was disappearing at a speed visible to the naked eye. However, the auras of the remaining poisonous insects were getting stronger and stronger. The time it took for the saber and Gang Qi to kill them was also getting longer and longer. The originally 3 feet wide ring was constantly shrinking under the pressure of the black tide, as if it could collapse at any time. Taoist Hong Chen knew that if he were in Lin Yuan's position, he would be able to kill the poisonous insects easily at first. However, in less than 5 breaths of time, he would be gnawed by the black tide and turned into a pile of bones. Tisk. Lin Yuan curled his lips and looked at the black tide that was getting stronger and stronger. He murmured, "They're using me to refine venomous insect art. However, this kind of poisonous insect can only be refined by devouring all kinds of poisons. The neutralization of various poisons ensures that there won't be any problems with the internal circulation. However, the circulation is extremely fragile. Even the slightest touch of a poison that is not in the range of mutual promotion and inhibition will cause sudden death on the spot." "That's right." DG chuckled and nodded. Soon after, he sneered and said, "I didn't expect that the Empress not only has astonishing strength, but also has such unique insight. However, everything is within my expectations. Before you came to Zhangyu City, you didn't know whether you were going to deal with me or Emota. In addition, I rarely take action. It would be strange if you were prepared." At this point, he paused and mocked. Could it be that the Empress carries with her some strange poisons that are not recorded in the Southern Wilderness Poison Catalog? Of course. Lin Yuan took over the topic and nodded with a smile. Then he took out a white jade porcelain bottle from his bosom. Chapter 941. The jade bottle contained Lin Yuan's cursed seal poison. Everything is calculated before victory is calculated. Therefore, before Lin Yuan rushed to Zhangyu City, he had already made plans. For example, the Southern Cultivation World had arranged for powerhouses to ambush and kill him. On this trip, he did not meet Emota from the Endless Sea, but DG from the Southern Wasteland. Making plans in advance might not guarantee victory, but when an accident happens, at least he would not be at a loss. DG's thoughts were very clear. Its appearance here had indeed caught Lin Yuan off guard, but after making preparations in advance, he would not be defeated directly. It was just that his preparations were not sufficient and he might not be able to deal with all of DG's methods. Venomous insects had always been feared by others. The viciousness of the venomous insects was even greater than some evil techniques. Once a goo poison was inflicted, other than seeking the pity of the person who inflicted it, there was almost no possibility of curing it. But everything in the world could not escape from mutual promotion and restraint. Even an incurable goo poison had a fatal weakness, and that was fighting poison with poison. To refine a strong goo worm, the goo master needed to select suitable seeds from countless mutated insects, then place them in a jar and pour in all kinds of poisonous water and powder day and night as food for these mutated insects. When the refinement reached a certain stage, the surviving mutated insects would possess a certain amount of poison and poison resistance. At this time, the mutated insects would have become goo worms. At this time, the goo master would gradually reduce the amount of poison thrown in, and these goo worms' food would go from surplus to insufficient. After a long time, they would start to kill each other and gnaw on other mutated insects' corpses to survive. This step was to strengthen the poison and poison resistance in the goo worm's body, and at the same time to cultivate the goo worm's ferocity and fighting spirit. Over time, the number of goo worms would become fewer and fewer, and the battles would become more and more intense. Until the end, the only surviving goo worm would be the treasure that the goo master wanted to refine. Then he would use all kinds of poison, spirit items, and flesh to cultivate it, gradually establishing the relationship between the goo master and the goo worm, allowing the goo worm to truly be of use to him. In the Southern Wasteland, the thing that determined a person's strength and status was never their cultivation level. If one had a special method to refine goo worms, even if they were just mortals, they could gain the respect of cultivators and demon beasts. This was because goo worms were undefeatable existences. Even powerful cultivators and demonic beasts did not dare to say that they could resist all the strange and terrifying goo worms. Then what was the special goo refining method? In fact, it was very simple. The refinement of goo worms was essentially no different from the refinement of pills. It was only the difference between living and dead things. As generations of goo masters continued to supplement and perfect the refinement method of goo worms also gradually appeared with all sorts of formulas. For example, which mutated insects should be chosen, what kind of poison should be used, how long should be nurtured, and how should one cultivate feelings and tacit understanding after refinement. Why did he fail to refine the pill? Because the heat was not right. Because the medicine was wrong. Even if one were to refine pills according to the ancient recipe and did all aspects well, there was a possibility that due to the difference in the age of the medicinal herbs, the medicinal properties of the pills would be different. It was the same for goo worms. The mutated insects and poison used during refinement, the time needed to nurture and so on were all strictly regulated. It was not possible to catch hundreds and thousands of mutated insects and throw them into a jar, and then feed them with poison water and poison every day. If one did that, there was an 80% chance that these mutated insects would be poisoned to death. But on the other hand, to refine a goo worm, one had to be perfect in all aspects. From the selection of mutated insects to the following steps, there could not be any problems in any step. As long as this step was disrupted, or a problem occurred in a certain step, the goo worm could not be refined, or it could escape the control of the goo master. The black tide in front of him could only be considered as poisonous insects and not poisonous goo worms. No matter how strong a goo master was, it was impossible to raise so many goo worms. After all, other than a few goo worms, almost 99% of goo worms needed the goo master's own blood to feed them. Even a demon beast like Lin Yuan would not be able to feed so many goo worms, not to mention feeding them a meal every day. But if one did not feed them, they would not be able to establish a connection with the goo worms, let alone being able to control the goo worms. All the painstaking steps before would be in vain. Pulling out the cork, he sprinkled the clear poison of the cursed seal inside. The poisonous insects that were attacking Lin Yuan's blade ring were splashed with a pool of unexpected poison. They were immediately stunned, and then began to roll and spasm on the ground. Many of the poisonous insects directly exploded and died, but there were also poisonous insects that were lucky enough to survive and struggled to pounce on the poisonous insects that continued to surge towards the blade ring. Then, the two sides began a fierce battle. The poisonous insects that could survive after being infected with the poison of the cursed seal were undoubtedly the stronger ones, but the number was too small. Facing the almost endless black tide, the most vicious of these poisonous insects could only tear apart 4 of its own kind before it was completely torn apart and eaten. However, the change was just beginning at this moment. Those poisonous insects that swallowed the mutated poisonous insects were like the predecessors that were sprayed with the poison of the cursed seal by Lin Yuan. They spasmed crazily. But this time, the poison of the cursed seal was obviously neutralized, so the poisonous insects didn't die. Thus, the mutated goo worms that were larger than their predecessors suddenly turned around and bit towards the poisonous insects that were rushing towards them. As the poisonous insects continued to fight, more and more mutated goo worms appeared. Even the black tide was completely suppressed, and it was even slowly spreading towards the underground cave where the black tide came from. The corners of DG's mouth twitched slightly, and its beak was also trembling unconsciously. Guan Zhaoshan was also a goo master? Using poison to break goo was the most common method between goo masters, but it was also a method that tested one's basic skills the most. Goo worms were mysterious and unfathomable, but in the eyes of those who knew the principles behind them, they were nothing. There were hundreds of mainstream goo worms in Southern Desolation, and there were 4,000 to 5,000 types of goo worms. Being able to recognize over 100 types of goo worms and use poison to get rid of 70 types could be considered an incredible goo master. But this Guan Zhaoshan was not from the southern wilderness. How could she see through its goo technique? Moreover, what kind of poison was that? Why had it never heard of it before? There were many goo worms, but the amount of poison they used was limited. Although there was a certain formula, many of the materials used to refine goo worms were mostly the same. It was impossible to destroy the original formula by just sprinkling some poison. When Guan Zhaoshan attacked, it also secretly used poison to restore the balance, but without exception, it couldn't save a single poisonous insect. Chapter 942. There were no more poisonous insects coming out of the underground cave. Even if DG had heaven-defying ability, He couldn't transfer a large number of poisonous insects from Southern Desolation in such a short time. The insects that were destroyed by Lin Yuan could be said to be all that DG had accumulated over these years. Thinking of this, DG felt his heart bleeding. Loss. Huge loss. Even if he killed Guan Zhaoshan and got the promised benefits from Southern Desolation, it wouldn't be enough to make up for his loss. After losing the Black Tide, the mutated venomous insects did not intend to stop there. They searched for a while and once again tore at their companions who were fighting side by side with them. Countless mutated venomous insects were killing each other, devouring each other's flesh and tearing off each other's organs to fill their own wounds. When the battle between the mutated venomous insects was over, an extremely ferocious and terrifying creature had already appeared on the battlefield. It had a centipede head, a snake body, a scorpion tail, spider legs, and a toad-like snake head hanging down from its mouth. It had butterfly wings on its back, and its whole body was covered in blood and various colored poisonous insect fluids, emitting a pungent stench. Goo formed? How can it be so fast? DG looked at the grotesque goo worm, and the shadow in his eyes became deeper. Refining a goo worm required a lot of time. This was a fact recognized by all goo masters. The poisonous insects he released earlier had only completed the first step, and they hadn't even started to cultivate their ferocious nature. He had to release them to deal with Guan Zhaoshan, but he didn't expect to refine a strange goo for Guan Zhaoshan instead. How many steps were omitted? DG didn't even dare to think about it. But soon, greed appeared in DG's eyes. To a goo master, the most precious treasure was a refined goo worm. In other places, cultivators and demonic beasts would fight over heaven and earth treasures, but in the eyes of Southern Desolation goo masters, heaven and earth treasures were only ingredients used to nurture goo worms. The purpose of their battles was to seize the goo worms refined by other goo masters. Guan Zhaoshan, this goo worm, he wanted it. As long as he could get this goo worm, everything he paid before would not be a loss, and it would even be a huge profit. Guan Zhaoshan, I didn't expect you to know my Southern Wastelands goo cultivation technique. I can't bear to kill you. DG flapped his wings and said with a smile, I'll give you a chance. Give me the method to refine your poison and this goo worm, and I'll spare your life today. How about it? Kill it. Lin Yuan narrowed his eyes and glanced at the goo worm. A cold light flashed across his eyes. There were different types of goo worms. Some looked no different from ordinary worms, and some had strange shapes. But the most fundamental difference between goo and worms was that goo worms generally had their own special abilities and could even cultivate by themselves. But they were not demonic beasts, because goo worms had extremely low intelligence, almost no different from ordinary worms. Moreover, their intelligence would not increase because of their cultivation. They only had the basic desire to kill and greed. Although the blood in the body of this voodoo insect had been replaced by the poison of the cursed seal, and it was reasonable to say that it was 100% obedient to Lin Yuan's orders, but when the two had a consciousness communication, Lin Yuan did not get close to this voodoo insect. He did not even know what abilities this voodoo insect had, and the only message it received was that it wanted to drink Lin Yuan's blood. Keeping such a greedy creature beside him was no different from a time bomb. Who knew when it would kill him? In fact, it was not rare for goo masters to die from the backlash of their goo worms. It could even be said that 80% of goo masters died in the hands of their own goo worms. After receiving Lin Yuan's order, the goo worm's tongue drooped down, seemingly dissatisfied. But the most basic instinct of a living creature was reminding it that if it disobeyed Lin Yuan's order, it would immediately die. It unwillingly pounced towards DG, who had a smile in his eyes. The goo worm's explosive speed was quite terrifying. If ordinary cultivators encountered this goo worm, they would probably instantly get close to them. Thinking about the stinky poison secreted by this goo worm, the result was obvious. This goo worm had just been refined, and now it had no cultivation, but in terms of speed, it was invincible below the void underworld realm. Looking at the goo worm flying towards him, DG's feathers stood up, and he shouted angrily, "Evil creature!" Although he was in the desolate demon realm, and had even touched the threshold of Demon King realm, he was after all from the southern desolate continent. Although he had a rich foundation, he was too lazy to cultivate powerful demonic arts, and almost 80% of his abilities were in goo worms. If they were to compete in explosive speed, this goo worm was probably faster than him by 30%. Others didn't know the power of this goo worm, but how could he not know? These strange worms were originally caught by him one by one, and the poison he fed them with was also carefully selected. Now that it was mixed with the strange poison that Guan Zhaoshan had spilled, the toxicity was extremely terrifying. Even if he was stained by it, he wouldn't be able to survive. With a shake of his right wing, several vessels similar to wine jugs fell to the ground, and a strong wine fragrance gradually spread. When the surrounding people smelled this wine fragrance, they couldn't help but take a few steps closer, as if the wine worms in their stomachs had been aroused. But not long after, some people woke up, and at the same time showed fear on their faces. They stretched out their hands to grab their disciples or friends, and quickly retreated, as if they wanted to get as far away from the wine fragrance as possible. The goo worm that was moving quickly also smelled the wine fragrance, as if it was really drunk, and its movements slowed down involuntarily. When it flew in the air, it also swayed up and down as if it was drunk. Poison! Lin Yuan shook his hands, and a violent burst of gang qi blew away all the wine fragrance that came toward him, and the members of the Red Dust Society behind him were not affected. F***C. A member of the Red Dust Society pointed at the ground beside DG and exclaimed in surprise. There were still grasslands, forests, and hills around Zhangyu City. After all, the southern part of the Shenwu dynasty was not all plains, but mainly basins and forests. When Lei Qiusheng set up the cauldron, he built roads, moved mountains, and cut trees to build roads that extended in all directions. Although there were people regularly cleaning and maintaining the roads, there were still many grasslands and shrubs around. Under the influence of this wine fragrance, the grasslands and shrubs quickly withered as if they had experienced half of spring and autumn, and a large area of withered yellow was formed in an instant. Especially the places where the wine jugs were broken, the ground nearby was pitch black and looked extremely frightening. Chapter 943. As the goo worm got closer and closer to DG, it seemed unable to withstand the poison and fell to the ground with a plop. The fear in DG's eyes dissipated, and he slowly exhaled a mouthful of turbid air. Although a little bit of poison would have a huge impact when refining a goo worm, the refined goo worm had a rather terrifying tolerance towards poison. When it released the poison, it had considered the dosage. If it wasn't for its caution, 1 or 2 bottles of wine poison might not have been enough to take down this goo worm. Since you refuse a toast, I'll punish you. DG turned his head to look at Lin Yuan. He opened his beak as if he had the upper hand again. But before he finished speaking, his eyes suddenly showed some fear. Then, he flapped his wings and directly rose from the ground. Just as DG flew up, a thick snake tail suddenly broke out of his body and wrapped around one of DG's claws. The sharp tail stinger at the end of the tail fiercely stabbed into DG's flesh. DG's face changed several times. He kept flapping his wings, but he couldn't get rid of the snake tail. Seeing the tail stinger getting closer and closer to him, a cold light suddenly flashed in his eyes. He swept his black wings and cut off his claws that were wrapped by the snake tail. Only then could he continue to fly. What the hell is this goo worm? 5 pots of undiluted wine poison smashed down. Even an ordinary southern wilderness demon king would have to lie down. How could it not defeat this goo worm? What was more terrifying was that this goo worm's intelligence was obviously not low. It actually realized that even if it could break through the wine poison, DG could release other poisons or goo worms to deal with it. It simply lay on the ground and pretended to be dead. At the same time, it pierced its tail into the ground and kept expanding its body. It was approaching DG in a more secretive way. If DG wasn't ruthless enough, he would have already been killed. Lin Yuan touched the tip of his nose and murmured, "I seem to have made something incredible." DG's poison was useless against the goo worm. This was something he expected. After all, the grade of the curse seal poison was not low. Once it came into contact with the poison, its life and death would be in Lin Yuan's hands. The system also didn't mention any restrictions on the cursed seal poison. Unless the poison person could instantly drain all his blood and not die, he would never be able to detoxify this poison. This showed how terrifying the cursed seal poison was. Ancient Chinese doctors had the theory of fighting poison with poison. When goo masters refined goo worms, they also had to carefully mix the poison. This also proved that most poisons were actually incompatible. When two incompatible poisons collided, it would often be the stronger one that got rid of the weaker one. Obviously, the strange poison emitting the wine fragrance was no match for the cursed seal poison goo worm. But this goo worm actually knew how to pretend to be dead and launch a sneak attack. Even ordinary spirit awakening stage demonic beasts wouldn't be able to achieve such a level of cunning. Good, very good. Guan Zhaoshan, I'll remember the pain and humiliation you've given me today. DG flapped his wings and flew in the air with a resentful expression. He forcefully controlled his muscles to stop the spread of the goo worm and growled, "Your life will temporarily stay here, wait for me, you can't leave." Lin Yuan raised his head and looked at DG. There was no sadness or joy on his beautiful face. His tone was also very indifferent, as if he was stating a fact. When his voice fell, the goo worm had already retracted its tail. The butterfly wings on its back flapped and it actually rose from the ground. Its speed increased sharply again, and it was even more terrifying than before. DG's expression changed again. He gritted his teeth, and a large number of black goo worms drilled out from his nostrils, ears, and mouth. Even under the pitch-black feathers, who knew how many goo worms drilled out? Like dumplings, a large number of goo worms came from top to bottom, drenching Lin Yuan's goo worm. "Eat this monster for me!" DG roared in the sky. It had lived for so long, but it had never felt as humiliated as it did today. It was a ruthless person ranked third in the Southern Wasteland Demon Pillar, but its voodoo technique was broken before it even made a move. Under the fear of the poison in Lin Yuan's hands, it didn't even dare to release its own precious voodoo to defend against the enemy. He originally wanted to retreat for now and find a chance to take revenge in the future. After all, goo masters were not an honorable profession. It was normal to use goo worms in the dark, especially in the Southern Wasteland. Who knew how many people died because of dozens of goo worms after drinking a mouthful of water? But only now did he think of one thing. Although he did not know where Guan Zhaoshan learned to be a goo master, the problem was he was not a goo master. Chase after a cornered enemy with courage. Do not learn from a tyrant for fame. This was the saying of a great person in his previous life. Lin Yuan also agreed with this 100%. Just like in his previous life, his enemy did not prepare properly and killed everyone in his family. If he went back now, he would bring disaster to his enemy. As long as there was a chance, Lin Yuan would not let any enemy leave, unless he needed this chess piece in the future. But the problem was, he did not need DG. Southern Wasteland Demon Venerable and the Northern Frontier's Black Jiao had already shed all pretense of cordiality. Even Hengduan Mountain Range and Endless Sea could not touch the Northern Frontier. Now that Lin Yuan was about to become the fourth demon vein, how could he let Southern Wasteland's Gold Squandering Cave and Gentle Village cause trouble in the Northern Frontier? Clang. The Yuan Long was pushed out of the scabbard inch by inch. Lin Yuan's gaze shifted from the various voodoo insects fighting in the sky to the tall figure who appeared on the city wall of Zhangyu City. The hair on his body stood on end. Demon! Great demon! The demonic beast looked a bit like a manta ray, quietly suspended in the air and staring at Lin Yuan. It should have shrunk its body size, but it still looked about 8 meters long. Its fangs were thin and dense, and seemed to be able to grind everything it bit. There was also a sharp object similar to a bone spur on the long black tail behind it. If it was really a manta ray, this kind of species with a tail spur on its back was most likely poisonous. An unexpected situation appeared. The Endless Sea demon beasts bordered the territory of Southern Wasteland Demon Venerable. The relationship between the two was not non-existent, but it was definitely not good. Emota and DG should not have appeared in the same place. When Lin Yuan was dealing with DG, Emota should not have appeared. Although it was not for sale, Its mere presence could bring extremely terrifying pressure to Lin Yuan. How strong could this demon beast that lived in a world similar to the Warring States period be? Let's put it this way, there were fierce generals in every dynasty, but the evaluation of being able to fight against 10,000 people was mostly just boasting. However, there were always a few in history who could really form an army and move unhindered in the world, such as Xiang Yu and Lu Bu. This kind of ruthless person would not appear in the peace-bearing world Dao. Their reputations were built by killing one blade at a time. There was no need for anyone to boast about them. Emota was such an existence under the command of that alien from the outer seas. Chapter 944. The battle in the sky was still going on. Nearly 80% of DG's methods were based on goo worms. However, against Lin Yuan's goo worms, his methods were not very effective. He was even a little afraid that the other party might have a backup plan. A group of poisonous worms that had not yet been refined into goo worms had been reduced to such a state. If the powerful goo worms were also controlled by that strange poison, how could he survive? Lin Yuan gradually withdrew his gaze. The abyss dragon in his hand trembled slightly. He pointed the blade at Emota and said in a low voice, "Fight." Emota moved and appeared in front of Lin Yuan in a flash. His explosive speed was even more terrifying than the previous goo worms. However, Emota did not attack immediately. Instead, he lowered his head and stared at Lin Yuan. He lowered his voice and said, "I can sense the aura of a demonic beast from your body. Furthermore, it's a demonic beast with dragon blood. You are from the Endless Sea?" Lin Yuan was slightly startled. He had the aura of a demonic beast? Guan Zhaoshan was an independent entity and not derived from Lin Yuan. When he did not use the system's ability, he had nothing to do with Lin Yuan. Even the Gang Qi and other energies in his body were all cultivated by himself. If there had to be a connection, the only thing that could be said was that his rapidly advancing cultivation came from the conversion of the power of faith. However, the power of faith was not demonic power after all. Especially after conversion, even Jing Chun's attribute points, or cultivation in the eyes of the natives of the Tianwu world, would not carry any aura. Why would Emota ask such a question? After a moment of silence, Lin Yuan took a deep breath and put away his blade. He said, "I am indeed related to demonic beasts, but I am not from the Endless Sea." Hearing this, the last trace of interest in Emota's eyes disappeared. He said, "If that's the case, then let's fight." Just as Lin Yuan was unwilling to face Emota under such circumstances, Emota was also unwilling to face Guan Zhaoshan at his peak. The southern wasteland was also a region near the Endless Sea. How could these demonic beasts from the outer sea not know how difficult it was to deal with goo worms? Now that DG was holding back the strange goo worm, it would be much easier for him to fight Guan Zhaoshan. Lin Yuan thought for a while and then said with a smile, "It seems that the beasts from the outer sea are very interested in the deep sea area. They have sensed the aura of the beasts from my body, so they want to know more about the deep sea area. Although I am not from the Endless Sea, I know a lot about the situation there. If you want to know something, I can tell you." Emota was stunned once again. He looked at Lin Yuan with a face full of doubt and asked in a muffled voice, "Are you lying to me?" Lin Yuan gently shook his head and said, "The undying Endless Sea's demonic beasts don't know about the Endless Sea? Then, the news that the Black Water Dragon King of the Northern Frontier entered the Endless Sea, are you really not aware of it?" Although the beasts from the outer sea were excluded because of the bloodline of the Four Seas Dragon clan, this did not mean that they were incapable. On the contrary, those old aristocrats who were decaying day by day would eventually be replaced by the new generation of power. Now, the Endless Sea was facing such a problem. If it were not for the fact that the secrecy work was done well, the beasts from the outer sea would have already killed their way into the deep sea area. Previously, although the news of Lin Yuan entering the Endless Sea was not known by everyone, it was not a secret either. Otherwise, there would not be so many people who chose this time to stir up trouble. Did the beasts from the outer sea in the Endless Sea know about this? Of course they did. However, when Lin Yuan entered the Endless Sea, he did not encounter any powerful forces among the beasts from the Outer Sea. This did not mean that the beasts from the Outer Sea were fools. Everyone knew that the Black Jiao of the northern frontier also had the bloodline of the Dragon Clan, and the purity was not low. The consequences of letting such an existence enter the Endless Sea were not hard to imagine. Once the Black Jiao and the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas reached an agreement, the power of the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas would increase by another level. They would encompass the north that used to belong to the Shenwu dynasty. Then, through the Wei River, they would connect the northern frontier and the Hengduan mountain range, activating the spies that had been buried in the Qing River dynasty for many years. They could even create a new dynasty that occupied the territories of the two great dynasties. Moreover, with the support of the Endless Sea and the Hengduan mountain range, even if the remaining 5 great dynasties joined hands, they might not be able to gain any advantage. From the perspective of the beasts from the Outer Sea, letting Lin Yuan enter the Endless Sea could be said to have both advantages and disadvantages. There were certainly advantages. After all, once this pattern was formed, the beasts would almost occupy half of the world. From then on, they could walk in the world openly and would not be trapped, kept in captivity, and become food on the human's table or materials for refining pills and weapons. As for the disadvantages, if the Black Jiao cooperated with the Dragon Tribe of the Four Seas, the Dragon Tribe of the Four Seas would definitely dominate the deep sea area. They would even defeat the Sea Demon Guild and the Hengduan mountain range, and become the most powerful force among the beasts. But what did that matter? Although the dragon blood demonic beasts in the deep sea area gradually disobeyed the command of the Dragon Tribe of the Four Seas, it was still an internal strife among the dragon blood demonic beasts. The dragon blood demonic beasts' authority was far from the point of them fighting for it. Once they entered the situation, they would be welcomed with a full-scale attack from the dragon blood demonic beasts. Therefore, even if the dragon blood demonic beasts became more powerful, what could they do? Just like how they were afraid of the dragon blood demonic beasts, how could the Dragon Tribe of the Four Seas have the guts to start a war with the beasts from the Outer Sea? Not to mention, the Dragon Tribe of the Four Seas had always been domineering in the Endless Sea. If the Black Jiao was not willing to cooperate, they would definitely use force. At that time, even if the Black Jiao died, he would be able to bite off a piece of meat from the Dragon Tribe of the Four Seas. Not to mention that the Black Jiao also had the backing of the Demon Court. If they really provoked the Demon Court to take action, the Overlord of the Endless Sea might really fall on them. You're related to the Black Jiao? Emota's intelligence was not low. In addition, Lin Yuan almost made it clear, so he naturally reacted quickly. The calamities in the Endless Sea have almost been resolved. Now, only some remnants are still causing trouble. However, it's only a matter of time before they are dealt with. Therefore, for the time being, the Endless Sea is safe. Whether it's the dragon blood demonic beasts or you don't need to risk your lives for a chance to land. As for the information that the beasts from the Outer Sea are interested in, I can also give you some. For example, in this calamity, which beasts' ancestors have fallen, which beasts' clans are on the verge of extinction, and the general situation of the deep sea area now. Lin Yuan put the abyss dragon back into the scabbard and said with a smile, I can tell you all the things that you're interested in. However, you should also know that I don't have a good heart and will not give people free delicacies. So, what do you have in exchange? Chapter 945. What do you want in exchange? Mo Ta's brain stopped working. The Four Seas Dragon Clan and the Sea Demon Guild had always been afraid of the demonic beasts from the Outer Sea. Therefore, they had blocked the demonic beasts from entering the Endless Sea. In addition, the Endless Sea was a battle between demonic beasts with dragon bloodlines and demonic beasts with other bloodlines. Without the dragon bloodline, it was impossible to enter the deep sea of the Endless Sea. Those with the dragon bloodline would not lead the wolf into the house and involve the demonic beasts from the Outer Sea in such an internal battle. Since ancient times, there were actually many dragon bloodline demonic beasts who could do this, especially those evil dragons who escaped to the Outer Sea. However, there were not many who had the determination to do this. After all, These dragon bloodline demonic beasts had been nurtured by the Four Seas Dragon clan since they were young. Even if they became evil dragons for various reasons and hated the Four Seas Dragon clan, they only wanted to take revenge personally. They would not lead the demonic beasts from the outer sea into the deep sea. After all, within the Four Seas Dragon clan, there were not only their enemies but also their relatives. However, Lin Yuan obviously did not have such scruples. The Four Seas Dragon clan and the Sea Demon Guild had joined forces to plot. They wanted to take over the city of trade, destroy the gray-scaled flood dragon person, and even kill him. In addition to all the previous unpleasantness, Lin Yuan wanted to make use of this opportunity to make the demonic beasts from the outer sea fight with the dragon bloodline demonic beasts. This was in line with his interests. Survival of the fittest, the law of the jungle. Such rules would not change no matter what era it was. It was just that in some eras, they were hidden. However, in the world of demonic beasts, in order to fill their stomachs and fight for a spiritual item, death, disability, and serious illness were all unscrupulous. Who would talk about etiquette and morality with demonic beasts? Even if there were such existences, they would not have a good ending in the end. What do you want? Emota's eyes turned and he decisively kicked the ball back to Lin Yuan. Firstly, I'm now at war with the southern cultivation world of the Shenwu dynasty. I don't know how your relationship is, but I don't expect you to stand out and help me directly. However, in the future, I don't want to hear about the demonic beasts from the endless sea helping the southern cultivation world. You should know that the northern frontier now has the potential to devour the divine martial arts world. These cultivators cannot change it, even with the help of the endless sea. Those who try to stop the trend will definitely be annihilated by the tides of time. Secondly, after all, the northern frontier has just been established. Although it has the aura of an emperor, it is inevitable that there will be some demons and monsters who will think about it. Therefore, after the northern frontier has solved the problem of the sky demon, we will eliminate a batch of the southern cultivators, whether they are from sects or aristocratic families. In a short period of time, our strength will definitely be empty. I also don't want the demonic beasts from the endless sea to come ashore and plunder here. Otherwise, I will regard it as an act of war. Thirdly, the relationship between the northern frontier and the southern wasteland is not harmonious. You only knew who I was after I took the initiative to reveal my identity, but DG should have known long ago. It just didn't say it out loud. Based on their behavior, the northern frontier and the southern wasteland are definitely irreconcilable. Therefore, you also have to make a statement. You have to decide as soon as possible whether you want to be on good terms with the northern frontier or the southern wasteland. Lin Yuan put forward his requests one by one with an indifferent expression. As an existence in the era of information explosion, Lin Yuan's understanding of intelligent creatures far surpassed the intelligent creatures of this era. The thing that an emperor was most afraid of was having an incredible talent under his command. In a short period of time, such a person could make a great contribution and it would be of great benefit to the entire dynasty. However, as time passed, an incomparably realistic problem would appear. For example, there would be no reward. There were many examples like this. There were also many heroes who, regardless of whether they liked it or not, would act like they liked wealth and beauties. This was the story of King Xian of Qi. However, during the Warring States period, Lianpe of Zhao was also like this. Looking at Lianpe's life, it could be seen that not only was this person outstanding in military ability, but he was also very moral. He was the kind of person who was capable and not greedy. The Battle of Chongping that broke the spine of Zhao was when Qin fought against Shangdo of Korea. It was not easy for Qin to win, but Korea threw the mess of Shangdo to Zhao. It was obvious that Zhao wanted to divert the trouble away. However, Zhao took it. It was not because the emperor of Zhao was an idiot, but because Lianpe was extremely good at defense. In other words, in the eyes of the emperor of Zhao, as long as Lianpe was there, even Bai Qi, who was called the killing god, was not a problem. Then, Zhao took over the war against Qin. Lianpe was indeed very capable and held on for a full 3 years under Bai Qi's control. In the end, Zhao changed generals and replaced Lianpe with Zhao Shi's son, ZhaoQue. the Zhao army changed from defense to offense, but was defeated by Bai Qi's plan. 450,000 Zhao soldiers were killed by Bai Qi in Changping, creating the name Killing God, but also a joke. In that battle, Zhao Kuo was not the main reason for the army's defeat. After all, according to historical records, Zhao Kuo took the initiative to attack and was surrounded by Bai Qi. This showed that Zhao Kuo did not panic and even plan the escape route. Furthermore, this was under the condition that the Zhao army had no food for 46 days. To be able to make his soldiers listen to his orders showed Zhao Kuo's ability. The real reason for their defeat was that Zhao had no food. Qi and other rich countries were not willing to lend them food. If Lianpe continued to defend, the Zhao army would collapse without Bai Qi's help. Thus, Zhao Kuo, who was good at offense, was sent to fight for a chance of survival. This also showed Lianpe's position in Zhao at that time. Everyone knew that he was very good at military affairs, but the king of Zhao would rather call Li Mu, who had holed up in Yanmen Pass for 10 years, the king of Zhao than Lianpe. Afterwards, no matter who it was, as long as they had a certain amount of ability, they could directly replace Lianpe's position. This was the common problem of all intelligent creatures. Did the king of Zhao not know how good Lianpe was? Of course he knew. But the problem was, how to use Lianpe. This kind of person was not greedy for money, was not lustful, and had excellent military and political abilities. Once used, he would be able to overshadow the king. However, Qin was very strong, and Zhao could not afford to lose such a talent. They could only use all kinds of methods to suppress him, and finally forced Lianpe to go to Wei. Thus, when negotiating with others, one had to show one's desire. The more greedy one was, the better. This would make people feel that one was trustworthy. Only then would there be negotiations and deals. If one showed no desire, then there would only be two situations. One was that the other party would turn around and ignore you. The other was that the other party felt that you had great desire because you had no desire. Even if they cooperated with you, they would be wary of you. Chapter 946. You should know that this is impossible. Emota shook his head and said realistically, since you are related to the Black Jiao, you should know the situation in the Endless Sea. Now, the various forces in the Outer Sea are in a state of war. We will not miss any power that we can borrow. Therefore, it is impossible for us to sever our relationship with the southern wasteland for the sake of building a good relationship with the northern frontier. After a moment of deliberation, he continued, however, we can indeed not participate in the southern cultivation world of the Shenwu dynasty. Now, everyone knows that the northern frontier will replace the Shenwu dynasty. In other words, this will be the territory of the northern frontier sooner or later. We are very realistic. We cannot stand on the side that is destined to fail. However, if we don't plunder, seeing the difficult expression on Emota's face, Lin Yuan also smiled knowingly. He was very clear about the thinking pattern of demonic beasts. For demonic beasts that were not good at farming and research, they had to plunder if they wanted to obtain various treasures and opportunities. The efficiency and probability of bumping into some mature spiritual objects by chance were too low, especially for the demonic beasts in the Outer Sea. Now that all sides were in a state of war, they needed a large amount of resources to cultivate and compensate their subordinates. Plundering the various human gathering points along the coast was undoubtedly the best way. I know what your worries are, Lin Yuan said with a smile, but since I have put forward the conditions, there must be a solution. The Endless Sea is different from the Hengduan Mountains. You don't need to worry about the butcher's knife of humans because humans are not suitable to live on the sea. Once they leave the land, the combat power of human cultivators will be greatly limited. Therefore, only you can plunder humans. But every time you plunder, you will also lose a large number of demonic beasts, right? If it were other demonic veins, this would be the best way to reduce the population. But what about you? Don't tell me that the number of demonic beasts in the Outer Sea has exceeded the limits of what each sea area can support and has to be reduced through war. We are indeed lacking in combat power. Emota was a little hesitant, but he still spoke the truth. After all, Lin Yuan had already shown his sincerity. Now, he would not suspect that Lin Yuan had any ulterior motives towards the outer sea monsters. Have you ever thought that the reason why the northern frontier was able to develop so quickly was because I established the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce before I swept across the Shenwu dynasty in the northern frontier? The trade came from the other 6 dynasties and various resources in the Hengduan mountain range. Therefore, the various forces benefited, and the northern frontier also benefited greatly. Put yourself in their shoes. If you were the demon beasts of the Hengduan mountain range, would you reject the existence of the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce? Lin Yuan's voice became somewhat low and deep. Coupled with the effect of the World Tyrant Song skill, his voice became extremely enticing. Of course not, Amoeba answered without hesitation. He said in a low voice, the emergence of the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce has greatly reduced the frequency of war between the 6 dynasties and the Hengduan mountain range. Although there are still small-scale conflicts, that is only because the population of both sides has swelled to the limit. They have no choice but to use this method to reduce the population. However, wars for resources like before are almost impossible to see now because they can buy everything they need from the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce. There is no need to sacrifice their lives for such things. At this point, Amoeba's eyes suddenly lit up. He said in surprise, "You mean to say that the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce is going to be built in the Endless Sea?" "That's right. I do have this idea." Lin Yuan nodded. Amoeba's eyes rolled around. He said with a smile, "If the Northern Frontier has such an idea, we will definitely agree. I can even go back and persuade the various forces among the demon beasts in the outer sea to jointly divide some sea areas for the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce to build branches. Even if we continue to fight, we will definitely not destroy the trade of the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce." The benefits of the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce were enough for the demon beasts of the Hengduan mountain range to eat their fill. Lin Yuan even relied on the potential influence of the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce. He relied on his strength as a mountain lord at that time and the northern frontier, which did not have any experts to back him up, to become a strong contender for the position of Beastmaster of the Hengduan mountain range. If the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce were to be established in the Endless Sea, that Black Jiao would not compete for the position of Overlord of the Endless Sea. Only a fool would reject this matter. I've already chosen the location. The preliminary preparatory work is also almost done. Unfortunately, we're already planning to withdraw. Lin Yuan shook his head, looking very regretful. It's already been adjusted. Even the preparatory work is... Mota looked like he wanted to say something but stopped. After a while, he stammered. You mean that the northern frontier intends to establish a chamber of commerce directly in the deep sea region? If the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce were to be established in the outer sea region, then it would definitely have received the slightest bit of news. After all, the strongest among the demon beasts in the outer sea were the forces under the command of the overseas mutants. As a general, he naturally had great authority. If he wanted to know something, there was nothing that could be hidden from his subordinates. Unless that matter happened in the deep sea region. Originally, I wanted to establish a trade city in the deep sea region to collect all kinds of spiritual items from the Endless Sea. At the same time, I wanted to open a trade channel to allow the Endless Sea to establish a trade route with the 6 great dynasties and the Hengduan mountain range. Unfortunately, the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas and the Sea Demon Guild obviously did not want a Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce to appear under their noses. Therefore, they joined forces to set a trap for me. They planned to swallow the trade city and expel or kill me. Lin Yuan shrugged and continued, therefore, we're planning to withdraw. There's nothing to talk about with such short-sighted people. Then, Amoeba opened his mouth again, looking eager to try. Since the dragon bloodline demon beasts did not welcome the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce, didn't that mean that the demon beasts in the outer sea had this opportunity? Impossible. You should know the specialty of the Willowstone Sea region, right? As far as I know, it's the best construction material in the entire Endless Sea. Although I'm willing to believe in the promises made by all parties, once the trade city opens, it's bound to collect goods from all parties and sell them together. At that time, if that sea demon clan has evil intentions, I'm afraid we'll immediately face a bloody disaster. Therefore, establishing a safe trade city is something we must do. Otherwise, it'll be too late for regrets. After all, we can't afford to compensate for so many goods. Willow stone is a specialty of the Willow Stone Sea region. Before this, it had always been a tribute from the Willow Stone Sea region to the dragon clan of the Four Seas. I think that those demon beasts in the outer sea who tried to challenge the authority of the dragon clan of the Four Seas had suffered losses more than once because of the fortifications built with willow stone, right? Lin Yuan's face was full of regret. It seemed that he really intended to give up the idea of establishing a trade city in the Endless Sea. Chapter 947. This was almost an endless cycle with no solution. The dragon clan of the Four Seas would never allow something like Willowstone to fall into the hands of their enemies. And the northern frontier definitely needed a trade city built of Willowstone. Benefits moved people's hearts. This was a common problem for intelligent creatures. Amoeba, who was used to war, was also clear that no matter what promises others made verbally, they were not worth believing. Therefore, if he wanted the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce to open in the Endless Sea, it meant helping the Black Jiao build a Willowstone fortress. Hesitation flickered in Amoeba's eyes. He asked tentatively, "If that's the case, why don't you tell me in detail? Perhaps we can help the northern frontier build this trade city? You may not believe me in other things, but you can definitely believe me in things that are beneficial to the entire Endless Sea. Especially for the various outer sea monster forces that are still in the midst of war. No one wants a Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce more than us, who can easily obtain all kinds of resources." Lin Yuan was silent for a moment. He narrated the business philosophy of the trade city, the trade prospects, the current difficulties, and even the traps set by the dragon clan of the Four Seas and the Sea Demon Guild. Amoeba nodded from time to time as he listened, but also revealed a puzzled expression from time to time. After Lin Yuan finished speaking, Amoeba said in a deep voice, "So, the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce's biggest problem now is that the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas and the Sea Demon Guild have invited Sunken Reef to surround the trade city. They intend to use this method to annex the trade city?" "That's right." Lin Yuan nodded slightly and continued, "As I said just now, this is the problem we're facing now. What's more troublesome is that even if we can get rid of Sunken Reef, it's useless. They'll definitely find an even more troublesome opponent and use this method to force us to submit. Therefore, there's no point in staying in the Endless Sea any longer. We've already decided to evacuate. Wait, if that's all, the outer sea monsters can resolve this calamity." Amoeba was suddenly a little excited. Because of his perspective and foresight, what he saw in this matter was not only the difficulties of the northern frontier, but also the opportunities that belonged to the outer sea demon beasts. Just like the dragon bloodline demonic beasts, although they had internal conflicts, they were still willing to work together against the demonic beasts in the outer seas. Although the demonic beasts in the outer seas had their own conflicts, they were still willing to work together when faced with the opportunity to occupy a territory in the deep sea. Lin Yuan was overjoyed, but his face revealed a puzzled expression. He asked, "What do you mean?" Amoeba forcefully suppressed the agitation in his heart and said, "Didn't you say that the northern frontier's biggest problem is the Sunken Reef?" However, he couldn't deal with it himself. Otherwise, he would face an even more troublesome enemy. "Then, why don't you let us solve it for you? As long as we don't expose our identity as demonic beasts in the outer seas, coupled with the pressure from various forces, even the pirates won't dare to disobey and attack you. Unless the dragon bloodline demonic beasts shed all pretense of cordiality and directly attack the city of trade, they won't have any troops to use." At this point, Amoeba's tone couldn't help but become a little excited. If the dragon bloodline demonic beasts do that, it'll be tantamount to shedding all pretense of cordiality with the northern frontier, the Hengduan Mountains, and even the 6 great imperial dynasties. When that time comes, we'll directly dispatch troops to attack the dragon bloodline demonic beasts. With the transmission matrix of the northern frontier, we'll bypass the Willow Stone defense line that the dragon clan of the Four Seas built to resist us. With lightning speed, we'll annihilate some sea demon clans and occupy a territory. At that time, they'll have no choice but to find a way to make peace with us. Especially now, when the dragon bloodline demonic beast's vitality is greatly damaged, the dragon clan of the Four Seas definitely won't dare to start a war with us. That's a good idea. Lin Yuan's face also revealed joy, but there was still some hesitation in his eyes. He asked doubtfully, but if that's the case, won't the dragon clan of the Four Seas bear a grudge against the northern frontier? I don't have any objections, but the Dragon King sighed. Now that the dragon clan of the Four Seas has joined hands with the Sea Demon Guild, hasn't their attitude already been made clear? Even if they don't bear a grudge against the northern frontier, they won't allow the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce to establish themselves in the Endless Sea. But even if they bear a grudge, they don't have the guts and ability to ascend the Tianwu continent and attack the northern frontier. On the contrary, if the northern frontier cooperates with us, the outer sea demon beasts, not only will they succeed in establishing themselves in the deep sea region, they will also open up a trade route from the deep sea region to the Tianwu continent. Moreover, the harvest won't be limited to the deep sea region. Amoeba stretched out his hands, which were derived from his pectoral fins, and slapped them heavily on Lin Yuan's shoulders. He said in a deep voice, "Black Jiao. No, Dragon King, you just have to persuade him. I believe that with his mindset, he'll definitely agree to cooperate with us. When the time comes, as long as you give the signal, we'll immediately take action and solve this problem for you." I'll definitely pass on General Amoeba's words. Lin Yuan bowed his head and bowed to Amoeba. His posture was very good. In that case, I'll take my leave. I'll try my best to persuade the other outer sea forces, but there's absolutely no problem with our side. Unless there's a short-sighted person, once the Allied forces are deployed, all the difficulties of the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce in the Endless Sea will be easily solved. Amoeba said with a smile. His figure flickered again, and he still appeared 1,000 meters away, rushing in the direction of Wu Jihai. After Amoeba left, a smile bloomed on Lin Yuan's face. Success. It was all thanks to the existence of the southern cultivation world. Otherwise, personally possessing the Endless Sea would not only be troublesome, but he might also lose this divine body that he had obtained with great difficulty. In order to express my gratitude, I'll let you die a quick death. A cold glint flashed in his eyes. Lin Yuan once again cast his gaze to the vault of heaven. The outcome of the battle between DG and the goo insect had almost been decided. After all, DG was an existence close to the Demon King realm. Although Amoeba did not make a move just now, he had restrained Lin Yuan's attention. Therefore, DG used all his means without any scruples and really suppressed that goo insect. After releasing a large number of goo insects, Lin Yuan's goo insect was also bitten full of holes. Even its breath was gradually weakening. It would probably die on the spot in another 3 to 5 breaths. Lin Yuan thought for a moment, then suddenly reached out and patted several acupoints on his chest several times. Suddenly, his face turned pale, and he spat out a mouthful of black blood. As soon as the black blood touched the ground, it corroded the ground, leaving a bumpy mark. A lot of white smoke was emitted, and at the same time, a sizzling sound was heard. Obviously, it was highly toxic. Immediately, the qi on Lin Yuan's body also withered. He took out a white jade bottle from his bosom, poured out 2 elixirs, and stuffed them into his mouth. Only then did he say vaguely, "What kind of ability is a sneak attack? I'll definitely kill you in the future." Chapter 948. With a thought, DG controlled the goo worms around him to devour Lin Yuan's goo worms, turning them into a pile of white bones. DG's aura also withered. After all, Lin Yuan's goo worms were quite terrifying. DG could not see through them and could only use the stupidest method to kill them. But in this process, DG also lost a large number of goo worms. One must know that the reason why Gu Master's Gu worms were called treasures was not only because they required large amounts of precious poison and strange worms to refine, but also because they needed to devour the Gu Master's blood to achieve the effect of telepathy. In other words, it was life intercultivation. Once the Gu worm died, the Gu Master would more or less suffer a backlash. When the backlash reached a certain level, the Gu Master could die suddenly. Although DG was not like those extreme Gu Masters in southern wilderness who used Gu worms to replace their own organs or kept the mother Gu in their bodies to release the child Gu to fight with outsiders, the degree of life intercultivation was not the slightest bit different. Using the method of exchanging stones to fight against Lin Yuan's Gu worms, DG was also at the end of his rope. DG originally thought that Emota could kill Lin Yuan, but unexpectedly, Emota actually dropped the ball and ran away in advance. However, Lin Yuan didn't know what means Emota had used before, but it was obvious that Lin Yuan had been severely injured and poisoned by Emota. At this moment, coupled with the backlash caused by the death of the Gu worm, Lin Yuan was estimated to have reached his weakest state. Even an ordinary person could easily kill Lin Yuan as long as they had the ability to get close to him. Kill or flee? DG's eyes clearly showed hesitation. As one of the 12 demon pillars of southern wilderness, no one knew better than DG about the temper of that demon venerable. DG's incompetence this time was undoubtedly a disgrace to southern wilderness. He would definitely be severely punished when he returned. In addition, Guan Zhaoshen's identity was special. The demon venerable had already indicated that although this Guan Zhaoshen was not Black Jiao's main body, it was his clone. DG had been sent out to the northern frontier to find Black Jiao or his subordinates. But before they even reached the northern frontier, they were already defeated by Black Jiao's clone. In addition, the northern frontier's rejection of the southern wilderness had already angered the demon venerable. If he couldn't even deal with the doppelganger of the Black Jiao, wouldn't he lose the great reputation that the southern wilderness had painstakingly built up over the years? If it went back with its tail between its legs, wouldn't the demon venerable skin it? That demon venerable could be said to be a genius. He had encircled the current southern wasteland from the Qing River Empire with one palm and fought against the Qing River Empire and the Chuyin Empire, as well as the endless sea demonic beasts that would invade the northern frontier every year. However, his biggest shortcoming was that he cared too much about his reputation. To the demon venerable, it was a small matter whether he could open a tender land to the northern frontier. However, the northern frontier had rejected his request directly and even went to war with the southern wasteland, causing the demon venerable to lose face. This was a big matter that required the northern frontier to pay with blood. If it retreated now and caused the demon venerable to lose face, then the consequences, but the problem was that although it had been fighting with the Gu poison insect, it had also been paying attention to Lin Yuan and Emota out of fear. It hadn't seen the two fight, unless Emota injected poison into Lin Yuan's shoulder when he touched Lin Yuan's shoulder. Otherwise, Lin Yuan was deliberately pretending to be seriously injured at this moment to lure the demon venerable to attack. His purpose was to kill the demon venerable with thunderous means. Guan Zhaoshen, you're now poisoned and suffering from the backlash of the Gu poison insect's death. You're already an arrow at the end of its flight. If I want to, I can easily kill you, but I don't want to take advantage of your precarious situation. If you kneel down and kowtow 3 times, I'll let you go today and won't even participate in any actions against you. How about it? DG flapped its wings, its face full of complacency. It felt that it was too smart. After all, Guan Zhaoshen was now a popular figure in the southern cultivation world. The Empress arsenal in its hands made countless people scramble for it. At this moment, it exposed the fact that Guan Zhaoshen was an arrow at the end of its flight. There were bound to be all kinds of malicious actions from the southern cultivators due to greed and other emotions. And in order to get rid of this great enemy who was close to the Demon King realm and skilled in the Gu poison art, Guan Zhaoshen would definitely kneel down and kowtow. Even if he could get rid of these malicious cultivators, he had already humiliated Guan Zhaoshen in this way. It could be said that he had helped the demon venerable vent his anger and gained back some face. Moreover, he had made a promise. The next time there was a mission against the northern frontier, The priority would definitely be to let the other demon pillars take action first. When the time came, he would stay out of it and wouldn't have to worry about trouble finding him. Kneel down and kowtow 3 times? Lin Yuan shook his head with a bitter smile and murmured, I seem to have said this not long ago. These demon beasts learn quite quickly. After saying this, Lin Yuan pulled out the Abyss Dragon Saber and pointed it at DG. His right hand holding the saber kept trembling as if it didn't have any strength. Even a layer of fine sweat gradually seeped out of his forehead. He then continued, Bah, even if I'm really at the end of my flight, I'm still better than you. If you really have the ability to kill me, why don't you come down and see if I can kill you? DG was dumbfounded. This person, why did he not play by the rules? It had already said so much. It was just a small matter of losing face. Did he have to make the 2 sides fight to the death? It was a great demon beast skilled in the goo poison art. Not to mention whether cultivation and combat power were proportional, just based on this unpredictable goo poison art, Guan Zhaoshan would not dare to slack off at all whether it was eating or sleeping in the future. Why did he have to do this? You care so much about face. Are you the twin brother of my demon venerable? Fine. I don't have the ability to kill you? DG was so angry that he laughed and scolded, I'll tell you now whether I have the ability or not. Speaking of this, DG's eyes were already red. It was obvious that it was extremely furious. A cold light flashed in Lin Yuan's eyes. The tyrant song of the world was indeed more and more useful. Previously, when he provoked Li Ran in Zhulu City, now he persuaded Mo and angered DG. He used the special ability of the tyrant song of the world. It was simply effective against these unprepared opponents. Especially a great demon like DG, who was seriously injured, was extremely terrifying. His words even aroused all the fierceness in DG's heart. In anger, DG no longer released goo worms. Instead, it used the most direct physical instinct. It flapped its black wings and directly pounced on Lin Yuan, who was holding the saber with one hand. After all, at this moment, it would rather be slashed by Lin Yuan than lose its goo worms. After all, external injuries were easy to heal, but internal injuries were no different from internal injuries. Caught. Lin Yuan looked at the white fleece flower that was getting closer and closer. He suddenly laughed and looked at DG, saying word by word. Chapter 949. DG, ? Seeing the smile that gradually appeared on Lin Yuan's face, DG's face also gradually revealed a puzzled expression. However, his puzzlement was destined not to be answered. Because the moment Lin Yuan finished his last word, a snow-white beam of cold light suddenly appeared. A white-feathered leader flew high into the air. Just like the 4 heads that were thrown out by Lin Yuan earlier, it fell to the ground and rolled a few times. Immediately, it was covered with a lot of dust. Sheathing his saber, the smile on Lin Yuan's face disappeared. The aura qi around his body fluctuated. His previously dispirited qi activity suddenly changed, as if nothing had happened. As he walked toward Zhang Yueqing, he said, Li family of Hichu, Sun family of Lianjing, Lishan sect, Jiaxing Pavilion. There are people from these families present. Have you seen the results of these 2 battles? DG and Mo, one died and one fled. The outcome has been decided. Do you have any last words? After Lin Yuan made a powerful move in Zhulu City and killed the 4 Kongming realm experts, the various forces in the southern cultivation world already knew that this rapidly rising empress could not be suppressed. However, they still did not restrain their desire for the empress arsenal. They even put forward the rules of the battle despite the insults of some people. They said that if the empress could defeat Mo and DG, they would no longer find trouble with her. However, if the empress lost, she would have to take the initiative to hand over the empress arsenal. The stakes of winning and losing were obviously not equal. Therefore, after Lin Yuan learned of this news, he took the initiative to say that if he won, the entire families of these participating forces would die. The risks and benefits were immediately proportional. At the same time, it also scared off many southern cultivation forces. However, at the same time, there were always people who thought that riches and honor could only be found in danger. Moreover, they did not believe that the Empress could really win. In other words, they did not believe that things could really develop to that stage. No matter how arrogant the Empress wasn't she only flaunting her power in the Lulan forces before? Could she really wipe out their entire families or something? However, at this moment, their mentality undoubtedly collapsed. DG and Mo Ta actually really lost to the Empress. Moreover, this woman actually read out the names of the forces that had signed the agreement in front of so many spectators. This meant that once this matter was over, she would start to destroy these forces. Moreover, it would be the kind of destruction that would wipe out their entire families. Guan Zhaoshan, we admit that you are indeed a genius, but you are far from enough to challenge the entire southern cultivation world, aren't you? We can promise not to be your enemy, and this matter will be dropped. If you really want to fight, the ethereal society will not be able to protect you. A middle-aged man in a black brocade robe walked out of the crowd and roared with a flushed face. What was the most embarrassing thing in the world? After losing the bet, the other party wanted to collect the debt in front of everyone. Yet, he still had to act tough and renege on the debt, even threatening the other party. After the middle-aged man said this, he suddenly felt that in the entire southern cultivation world, apart from Lu Jingsheng, his reputation was probably the worst. You are, the person in charge of the second branch of the Li family of the river diagram, right? Lin Yuan did not know this middle-aged man. It was only when a follower of the Red Dust Society reminded him in a low voice that he knew the other party's identity. After confirming the other party's identity, he waved his hand like he was shooing away flies and said impatiently, "Let's start with the annihilation of the Li family of the river diagram. I want to see how much ability you have to take someone's life." As soon as his voice fell, all the spectators were stunned. Guan Zhaoshan's reaction was really unexpected. Although Guan Zhaoshan was already familiar with the annihilation of a sect, coupled with the provocation of the southern cultivation world first, at most they could only criticize Guan Zhaoshan for being ruthless and not caring about the face between cultivators. Even if they racked their brains, they could not prove that Guan Zhaoshan's actions were wrong. After all, the Sky Martial continent had been evolving for so many years. Sects, families, clans, and even dynasties had been annihilated. Examples of the remnants of the god-sculpting sect like the Red Dust Society were still active in the world were few and far between. But even so, the Red Dust Society had fallen from the former number one sect of the south to the point of being associated with the loose cultivators of the forest. This point alone proved that the various forces of the southern cultivation world were not much gentler than Lin Yuan. It was just that when the perpetrator became the victim, the difference between the two made them feel extremely sad. Even if they were not named by Lin Yuan, because they did not wish to pay such a heavy price and withdrew early, or even if they did not participate in this matter from the beginning, when they heard the names that were called out by Lin Yuan, as well as the middle-aged men with ashen faces, they could not help but feel a sense of sympathy. You're right. Guan Zhaoshan's actions is almost making an enemy of the entire southern cultivation world. Even if my ether society were to be destroyed, we would not be able to save her life. So this Zhang can guarantee that if you want to kill Guan Zhaoshan, the ether society will definitely not interfere. As long as you really want to die a clean death. A hoarse voice suddenly rang out. Everyone turned their heads and saw a man who was completely wrapped up in pitch-black armor and wearing a white mask walking over as if he was taking a stroll. There was a large number of cultivators dressed in the Ether Society's attire following behind him. There were also quite a number of famous characters from the Southern Night Bandits ranking. For example, the Liu brothers, Lian Hua, and the others. What was even more eye-catching was the green-clothed young man next to the black-armored man. Third on the Night Bandits list, the all-knowing man, Qin Ping, who was known to know everything. This person had not committed any monstrous killing or shocking crimes, but he was ranked third on the Night Bandits list, and his bounty was so high that it made one's hair stand on end. This was because this man was known to know everything, and he really knew everything. Regardless of whether it was the secrets of the various sects that were kept secret, or the secrets that had happened in a certain period of time, as long as you could pay the price, he would be able to tell you everything. As long as such an existence lived in the world, it would undoubtedly be a great threat to the sex and aristocratic families. However, some people wanted to kill Qin Ping quickly, while others wanted to protect Qin Ping so that they could obtain more secrets. This was why he was able to keep his life. It was said that after being assassinated again, Qin Ping was seriously injured and almost died. After that, he disappeared without a trace, never opening up his business again. Until today, he had appeared together with the people from the Ether Society. Hostility gradually appeared in everyone's eyes as they looked at the Ether Society. Did it mean that the Ether Society already knew all of their secrets for them to have recruited someone like Qin Ping? However, compared to this, they were more curious about the meaning of the black-armored man's words earlier. Chapter 950. Right now, the southern cultivation realm can be said to be the most powerful force in the Shenwu dynasty. This is because this place has not experienced many wars. Be it ordinary people or cultivators, the number of people here is countless times greater than the areas controlled by the Shenwu dynasty in the past. However, this does not mean that a new regime will be born in the southern cultivation realm. To put it bluntly, they are a bunch of trash who can't even deal with the Sky Demon. They clearly know that the Sky Demon from the Central Plains is heading south, but instead of thinking about how to deal with this calamity, they are hiding in temporarily safe places and scheming against each other. The black-armored man pointed at a few people and said with a sneer, "These are the elders of the southern cultivation world. They have been around for many years. I wonder how many heavenly demons you can kill in the face of the heavenly demon army. You're just trying to scare us." A middle-aged man with a pitch-black heavy sword on his back raised his eyebrows and said with a cold smile, "There are many aristocratic clans and sects in the south. Even the forces under the Heavenly Gates Guardians have taken root here. A mere sky demon has never been a threat to us." "Is that so?" The black-armored man smiled and asked in return. Then he shrugged and said in a mocking tone, "But according to Qin Ping's information, the cities near the Central Plains have basically fallen. Some people here know about this, while others don't. However, it has been a very long time since you've received news from the front lines, right? As for the Heavenly Gates Guardians," he paused for a moment, then his tone rose slightly as he continued in a mocking tone, "they are now facing even greater trouble and have no time to deal with the Sky Demon. Previously, they had already entrusted the Shenwu dynasty's Sky Demon problem to the Black Jiao of the northern frontier to deal with. Therefore, up until now, have you seen the Heavenly Gates Guardians take action? Oh, I almost forgot. Right now, the northern frontier is also facing trouble. Therefore, they can only defend and are unable to advance. If everyone continues like this, I reckon that before the northern frontier can head south, most of the people here will have died." After he finished speaking, everyone's countenances did not look too good. Although Fang Xinjian did not know the identity of the people from the He clan, based on how he had led the members of the Ether Society, he was most likely that mysterious supreme chief. Moreover, the words of the man in black armor were not baseless. It was no secret that the Sky Demon was heading south. The cities near the Central Plains had spontaneously formed alliances to resist the Sky Demon. Earlier, there were cultivators and mortals who had escaped from the front lines. But now, the most recent piece of news was from close to half a month ago. It was an urgent request for help from the front lines. However, the fire did not reach their homes. Few people were willing to take the risk, so the request was shelved. After that, there was no news from the front lines. Currently, there hadn't been any large-scale Sky Demon attacks to the south, but there were occasional occurrences of a Sky Demon appearing. Out of instinct, they were naturally willing to think positively. However, when the man in black armor put these problems on the table, no one dared to be optimistic and say that there were no problems with the alliance at the front lines. Furthermore, the Guardians of the Heavenly Gates had no intention of taking action. Even though there were many influences in the south that were related to the Guardians of the Heavenly Gates, these people were merely the minions of the Guardians of the Heavenly Gates. If necessary, they could be abandoned. Once this matter was over, the guardians of the heavenly gates could support even more powerful influences to work for them. As for this, Guan Zhaoshan, the name of the empress, has been in the limelight recently. At first, everyone was wary of the Ether Society, but later on, they coveted the empress' arsenal. Thus, the reputation of the Ether Society is not very useful. I admit this. At this moment, the man in black armor had walked to a spot about 3 meters behind Lin Yuan. He stopped in his tracks and made a throat-slitting gesture. He said, "The Ether Society is unable to protect her. Thus, if you want to kill or torture her, please do as you wish. However, I can guarantee that if anything happens to Guan Zhaoshan in the south, when the northern frontier resolves its problems and heads south, everyone present here or not will be King buried together with her." Hiss. As soon as he finished speaking, there was the sound of cold air being sucked in from the surroundings. Guan Zhaoshan's relationship with the Ether Society was actually not a big deal to the cultivation world of the South as a whole. There were too many influences that had the ability to wrestle with the Ether Society. Previously, they did not touch Guan Zhaoshan because they felt that there was no need to clash with the Ether Society. However, when the benefits reached a certain level, what was the face of the Ether Society? They really did not believe that the Ether Society would shed all pretense of cordiality with the entire cultivation world of the South for a woman. Thus, the matter of Lian Hua and the Lu brothers standing up for her was at most a deterrent to the southern Lu Lin and the loose cultivators. However, the words of the man in black armor now were thought-provoking. This woman was related to the northern frontier. Although the cultivation world of the South had always been scheming against each other to create a new regime to replace the Shenwu dynasty, they knew in their hearts that they could not be like the northern frontier and the southern wasteland just because they occupied a territory. Firstly, they did not have a background. Secondly, they did not have a foundation. It was impossible for them to imitate the northern frontier and the South to become rich. They only wanted to eliminate all other voices before the northern frontier army went south. Then, the various factions would work together to guarantee the right to speak. This was to prevent the northern frontier from occupying the former land of the Shenwu dynasty. Sects and families with thousands of years of history like them could only watch from the sidelines. Or rather, they could simply become a piece of juicy meat in the eyes of the upper echelons of the northern frontier. So, what if this woman is related to the northern frontier? The middle-aged man with the heavy sword on his back saw that everyone was deep in thought. He continued to put on a strong front and said, "If the situation is as you say, then we can't even get past the Sky Demon. How can we talk about the northern frontier going south? Why don't we seize the Empress Arsenal and send it to the Yun Empire and the Xinjiang Empire in exchange for a way out? I don't care who you are. If you want to meddle in other people's business, then draw a line. Otherwise, just get lost. If you want to make us hesitate to attack with empty words, then you are delusional." The Tianwu world was overcrowded. The various empires, demonic beast factions, and even some reclusive families and sects that occupied territories had been deliberately maintaining a high intensity of war to ensure that the population of the Tianwu continent did not exceed the upper limit of what could be supported. Strictly speaking, even the royal bloodline of the previous 7 empires were treated as cannon fodder if they did not have a certain level of talent. The southern cultivation world could not defeat the Sky Demon, nor could they defeat the northern frontier, so they could only run away. However, whether it was the Xinjiang Empire or the Yun Empire, it was impossible for them to have territory. Even if they had connections with some powerful sects, it was useless. If you went to them empty-handed, they would not want you. This was the fundamental reason why many factions in the southern cultivation world coveted the Empress Arsenal. If you wanted to be taken in, you had to show your value. Otherwise, you would only be cannon fodder if you went there. At most, you would die a little later. Chapter 951. Didn't I already say this before? The black-armored man shrugged his shoulders again and said in an indifferent tone, "If you want to touch her, the Ether Association definitely won't be able to protect her. Therefore, I won't stop you. I'm only here today to say what I said before. If you want to die, then kill yourselves. Don't drag everyone down with you, understand? The atmosphere suddenly became stifling. Previously, they had guessed that Guan Zhaoshan could be the supreme chief of the Ether Association or the woman of the supreme chief, which was why they acted so recklessly. However, if Guan Zhaoshan was related to the northern frontier, then she was indeed an existence that they could not deal with. The treasures in the Great Empress Arsenal were actually not a secret. As long as one could complete the missions given by the Red Dust Society, regardless of their background, they would be able to obtain points to exchange for various cultivation techniques, resources, and even treasures. Given the size of the various factions in the southern cultivation world, they had actually already copied most of the cultivation techniques in the Great Empress Arsenal. However, this was still not enough. There were many types of cultivation techniques in the Great Empress Arsenal, and they were all-encompassing. However, at the end of the day, they were all incomplete versions. At most, they could only be cultivated up to the entry level of the Void Realm. What was the use of cultivation techniques of this level to others? If they wanted to, they would be able to obtain them themselves. Why would they need to send them over? The truly valuable ones were the remaining parts of the cultivation techniques in Guan Zhaoshan's hands. However, the problem was that in order to obtain these remaining parts, not only would one need an astronomical number of points, one would also need to join the Red Dust Society as the main body, and the various factions of the Lulin as the branches. This was an alliance that gathered all the individual cultivators in the southern region. If one wanted to join this alliance, the vetting process would be much stricter. Only true individual cultivators had the right to join this alliance. Otherwise, even if one did not belong to a sect on the surface, but had the support of a sect behind the scenes, one would still be directly eliminated during the audition. As for bribing those individual cultivators? What a joke! How could these people who didn't belong to any sect or family still be able to make a name for themselves in the cultivation world, be easy to deal with? They couldn't bribe the powerful rogue cultivators because from the very first day they started cultivating, they didn't bother with sects or aristocratic families. If they played dirty tricks, they might not be able to win against them. It would be troublesome if they became enemies. Moreover, the Rogue Cultivator Alliance had just been established, and there were no signs of corruption. It could be said that they were of the same breadth and branch. If you provoked one, it was equivalent to provoking the whole group. There were even a few second-rate sects that were annihilated because they provoked the Rogue Cultivator Alliance. As for those rogue cultivators who were not powerful, unfortunately, exchanging for the follow-up cultivation technique required an astronomical amount of points. This threshold directly locked them in. Even if they managed to bribe these people, they wouldn't be able to obtain the follow-up cultivation technique. If you were to secretly sponsor them and the Rogue Cultivator Alliance found out about it, you could use it as a reference to what happened to those forces that were annihilated by them. However, if you didn't sponsor them, by the time they accumulated enough points, it would probably be too late. If not for this, why would they find trouble with Guan Zhaoshan? Now that they were trapped here, it was obviously impossible for them to continue fighting, because that would be tantamount to falling out with the northern frontier. So what if they escaped to another dynasty? Which dynasty didn't have the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce now? As long as it was related to the word business, they would more or less have to give the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce some face. Firstly, if the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce ate meat, they could also eat some soup. Secondly, if they really offended the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce, they wouldn't be able to do any business that spanned more than 2 dynasties in the future, because they would never be able to bypass the Northern Frontier's sphere of influence. If they didn't take the Northern Frontier's trade route, should they take the Central Plains where the Sky Demon was entrenched? Or should they really fight with those merchants that ran the sea route and snatch the coastal trade route? So what if they snatched the sea route? It was only a matter of time before the Northern Frontier went south. When that time came, the Central Plains and the South would still belong to the Northern Frontier. Furthermore, who didn't know that although the Black Jiao wasn't from the Four Seas dragon race, it was a true dragon bloodline goblin beast? If they offended a dragon bloodline goblin beast and still took the Endless Seas trade route to do business, they wouldn't even know how they died. These powers that were related to the word business might not be strong overall, but they were good at disgusting people. If you offended them, they wouldn't be able to do anything to you, but practitioners who were related to you would never be able to buy resources from these merchants. As time passed, there would always be people who would place righteousness above family ties and take your head to apologize. You couldn't just snatch them if they didn't want to sell to you, right? For these chambers of commerce to be able to do such big business, not to mention their own strength, they all had powerful backgrounds behind them. The royal families of the various empires, first-rate or even super first-rate sects, and even the few well-known chambers of commerce in the Tianwu continent, except for the Northern Region Chamber of Commerce, basically all had the Heavenly Gate Guardian behind them. Even if you snatched something, you had to be alive to use it. But let Guan Zhaoshan off just like that? Who would let them off? It was hard to say when the northern frontier would go south, but the sky demon's move south was imminent. In fact, no one knew how many existences that had been possessed by the sky demon were lurking in the cultivation world in the south. If the northern frontier didn't make a move and the Heavenly Gate's Guardian didn't make a move, relying on themselves to encounter the sky demon was like throwing an egg at a rock. After all, the sky demon wasn't something that could be killed by treasures or spells. Apart from the northern frontier who dared to say that they could eliminate the sky demon, even the Heavenly Gate's Guardian could only use various treasures to suppress and seal the sky demon's body. Furthermore, it wasn't a permanent insurance. At most, in a few decades or 100 years, the sealed sky demon might break out and cause trouble again. Lin Yuan narrowed his eyes slightly and glanced at Zhang Xiu, who was covered in black armor. Although Zhang Xiu didn't reveal his identity, he still had the curse mark poison in his body. His life and death were in Lin Yuan's hands. Moreover, he was now 3 meters away from Lin Yuan. Even if Lin Yuan didn't look at him, in his perception, Zhang Xiu was as conspicuous as a 10,000-watt light bulb. Since Zhang Xiu had already said so much, he already had an idea of how to end the situation. However, there was still a problem. If the South's cultivation world wanted a way out, Lin Yuan also needed a large number of people. If there was a chance, he naturally wouldn't let these cultivators benefit the sky demon. However, Lin Yuan couldn't decide for the time being whether to send these people to the northern frontier to help clear out the Undying or to let them go to sea to pressure the dragon race of the 4 seas. Although there were no existences above the Tao Initiation Realm, Void Realm and Heaven Realm cultivators weren't considered cannon fodder. At least, they were quite useful against the minions of the Endless Sea. Since you treat me as a way out, have you ever considered cooperating with me? Lin Yuan put his hands behind his back and very naturally took over the conversation. Chapter 952. Miss Guan, please speak frankly. How do you want to cooperate? Suddenly, a voice full of energy rang out from the crowd. Lin Yuan's gaze turned, and he suddenly burst into laughter. It was an acquaintance. Yangji Sect's sect master, Tao Initiation Realm cultivator, Sun Xingzi. Previously, when the Dragon Clan of the 4 Seas contacted the Elysium Guardians to launch a pincer attack on the old rulers, the eldest son of the Dragon King of the East Sea blocked the gate of the Yangji sect and successfully obtained the stepping stone. He used Lin Yuan's transmission array to attract a large number of Elysium Guardians and cut off the escape route of the old rulers. The fact that Lin Yuan was able to make the cultivators of the Tao Initiation Realm and even higher realm cooperate with the demon beasts, in addition to the fact that Lin Yuan scared the higher-ups of the Elysium Guardians in the Endless Sea, was mostly because this old man was usually very popular. Of course, for existences like cultivators, having good relationships with others and having good moral character were 2 different things. To be able to cultivate to this level in this incomplete world that seemed like a transcendent realm in the eyes of ordinary people, the resources and opportunities needed were not small. Things like killing people and seizing treasures were probably not few in number. Sun Xingzi was already a Tao Initiation Realm cultivator. Although it was only a difference of 1 realm, he was still a far cry from a Void Realm cultivator. This was because having a Tao Initiation Realm cultivation was equivalent to having the identity of a guardian of the Heavenly Gate. With such an identity, if Sun Xingzi left and went to the territories of other dynasties, those sects, clans, and courtiers would have to obediently serve him. There was no need for them to be dragged into this calamity. However, Sun Xingzi was only a Dao initiation realm cultivator and was only one of the outermost members of the Heavenly Gate Guardians. He didn't have the face to move the entire Yangji sect. Between his own survival and protecting the sect, this old man chose to protect the sect. This was something that Lin Yuan didn't expect. I do have a way to survive, and there are two of them. Lin Yuan put the yuanlong back on his waist, and his beautiful face kept changing. Finally, he showed a warm smile and said softly, "It's just that there is no free lunch in the world. There are two ways to survive. No matter which one you choose, you need to use your life to do something for me. It's just that compared to the current heavenly demon disaster, the things I ask you to do may be more dangerous, but at the same time, your disciples, children, and descendants can be saved. How about it? Miss Guan, what are the two ways to survive?" Another voice sounded from the crowd. Although the old man who spoke was only at the void netherworld realm, from his aura and clothes, he probably came from an extraordinary background. There were other cultivators around him who were dressed similarly. They were basically at the void netherworld realm and heaven dipper realm. One way is to go north. I can arrange boats and aquatic beasts to take you across the Wei River. The Baixing Navy has some influence in the northern frontier, so if you just want to go to the northern frontier, they won't make things difficult for you. If you go north along the Wei River, you can temporarily reorganize in the northern frontier. At the same time, you can leave the people who are not involved in the battle behind. But I have to say the ugly words first. The northern frontier will go south sooner or later. The power structure has already been set. Things like sects have no need to exist in my eyes. If you want to stay in the northern frontier, you need to disband your sections. At that time, whether you want to establish a family or enter the Northern Frontier Academy as an instructor, you are all welcome. But if anyone wants to stir up trouble in the northern frontier, don't blame me for being ruthless. Other than this, if you want to go to the northern frontier, you will receive all kinds of supplies from the northern frontier. In return, you have to help the northern frontier deal with the sky demon near the Wei River, as well as some monsters that cannot be killed by normal means. But those monsters can still be dealt with by the northern frontier. You just need to listen to orders and cooperate with the army and cultivators of the northern frontier. Lin Yuan pointed to the north. After a pause, he continued, "In addition, like I said before, things like sects have no need to exist in my eyes. Whether you go north or not, you can either disband your sects or fight a war. I will help you disband them." Instantly, everyone's expressions froze. There was no need to talk about the fate of the families and sects of the northern frontier. When Lei Qiusheng was in power, the Central Plains, as his territory, had focused on attacking the sections. The lives of the families had been better, but only slightly better. Only the south under Lei Qiusheng's jurisdiction and the nearby regions were places where the families and sects held power. Especially after the Shenwu dynasty and the southern regime established by Lei Qiusheng were destroyed, this place had become a paradise for the families and sections. Now, Guan Zhaoshen had laid her cards on the table. The northern frontier had no intention of accepting sections. In the eyes of a modern person like Lin Yuan who had grown up under the red flag, things like sects could be replaced by schools. If there was no cultivation in the world, public schools and private schools did not matter. But now that there were cultivators, Lin Yuan had to take control of these organizations that nurtured cultivators. Even if he could not completely destroy them, he had to weaken them as much as possible. Otherwise, the world would fall into chaos sooner or later. Wanting to live was tantamount to disbanding sects? For a moment, the expressions of the cultivators present immediately collapsed. As for the suggestion of disbanding sects and establishing families, normal people knew that this was a joke. The families of the northern frontier were different from other families. They had strict rules. If they crossed the line, they would beat you. But if they did not cross the line, even if the families were passed down through the ages, they would only be rich and not valuable. This was completely different from their original idea of wanting to have the right to speak in their hands. The second way to live is actually very simple. I will contact the demon beasts in the outer sea. You can go out to sea and leave the Tianwu continent. There are some islands nearby that you can live on. The demonic sect that had wreaked havoc in the south previously rested on those islands. After so many years, if you are willing, you can also clear out some islands and continue to maintain your sections. When the northern frontier occupies the south, I will not reject you like I did with the demonic sect. The Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce will open up a trade route in the Endless Sea, and you are welcome to purchase or sell at any time. Some of you might say, if you want to run to the islands overseas and struggle at death's door, why do you want to cooperate with me? This question is actually very easy to answer, because only with my approval can you establish a foothold on the islands overseas. Otherwise, with just you, how many of you dare to drag your families to the Endless Sea to find an island to live on? Lin Yuan slowly spread out his hands and said with a smile, "Yes, I am indeed threatening you. If you insist on preserving your sex and even don't hesitate to live on the islands overseas, then be careful when you communicate with us in the future, because not only can I let you establish a foothold there, but I can also let you die without a burial place overseas." Chapter 953. If we choose to go out to sea, what do we have to pay? Sun Xingzi, who had already walked out of the crowd, frowned and asked in a clear voice. As soon as he finished speaking, the whispers in the surroundings seemed to have been muted. Everyone's eyes fell on Lin Yuan once again. These people had different expressions, but the dilemma in their hearts was the same. It was just like when the gap between people was huge to a certain extent, emotions like jealousy would not arise. The strong rise of the northern frontier was also destined to dominate this land in the future. No matter how many tricks they had in the dark, they would not be so naive to think that they could take advantage of the northern frontier. If you're willing to go out to sea, I'll allocate some safe islands for you to live on. If you don't violate the rules, I can guarantee that no sea demons will attack you for no reason. However, if it's a problem caused by the diplomatic problems between you and the sea demons, I won't interfere. After all, I'm only giving you a way to survive, not to be your nanny. Lin Yuan shrugged, and a trace of doubt flashed in his eyes. That's all. Sun Xingzi's brows were still knitted together. He did not believe that Guan Zhaoshan did not have any ulterior motives. However, compared to Guan Zhaoshan's ulterior motives, he was more concerned about the northern frontier's attitude. After all, most of the people present were heavyweights of the sex and aristocratic families. Regardless of aptitude and strength, their own interests were absolutely tied to the forces they belonged to. Simply put, the stronger the force they belonged to, the greater the authority they had. Even if some of them didn't need such authority, they could still use it to nurture their bloodline descendants or disciples, ensuring that their branch would flourish for a long time. However, the northern frontier's overbearingness was beyond everyone's imagination. The north was in chaos. It was not surprising that the northern frontier joined forces with the Shenwu dynasty to eradicate the sects and suppress the aristocratic families with the general trend of the Hengduan Mountains. However, what about the Central Plains? What about the south? Could the northern frontier still be the same as before and not put all the aristocratic families and sects in their eyes? To them, that was almost impossible. Even when Lei Qiusheng was at the peak of the nation's power after he usurped the throne, he didn't dare to openly declare that he would be enemies with all the sects and clans. After all, if these people worked together, they could turn the world upside down. Even the prosperous Wanjian dynasty could be overturned by them, let alone a traitor like Lei Qiusheng. But that was the attitude of the northern frontier. If they wanted to make a living in the northern frontier, they would have to disband their sects and the aristocratic families would have to live according to the rules. Whether it was in the north, the Central Plains, or the south, the attitude of the northern frontier was the same. Could it be that the northern frontier wasn't afraid of the aristocratic families and sects working together to overthrow the northern frontier's rule? If it was during the Qingping era, the northern frontier would of course be afraid of these powers working together. If not, Lin Yuan wouldn't have created the Northern Frontier Academy and the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce, which were both in the limelight today. The former almost replaced everything that the sects did, but it only trained talents for the Northern Frontier. Although there would still be various factions, at least they would have the same interests as the Northern Frontier. They wouldn't be like the sects, fighting for their own interests. Although the latter brought great benefits to the aristocratic families, it also cut off the possibility of the aristocratic families controlling the imperial court. Once it reached a certain scale, if Lin Yuan wanted to suppress an aristocratic family in the future, he wouldn't even need to use force. He just needed to cut off the cooperation between the aristocratic family and the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce, and in 2 or 3 years, he could easily destroy an aristocratic family with thousands of years of history. If he didn't have this kind of power in his hands, Lin Yuan wouldn't be able to calm down. If the Shenwu dynasty could use the power of all the aristocratic families and sects, why would Lei Qiusheng take the risk to cooperate with the Sky Demon and turn the Shenwu dynasty into what it was today? Of course not, he. Lin Yuan sneered and said coldly, even if you establish sects overseas, under the condition that I don't prohibit you from stepping into the Northern Frontier territory, you can still develop your own power behind the scenes and still pose a threat to the Northern Frontier. Therefore, if you choose to go out to sea, you have to help me conquer some sea demon clans. I will give you corresponding rewards, such as cultivation methods, resources, and even places on the overseas islands that can be considered as paradise. I can also give you directly. It was still the same sentence. If it was during the Qingping era, Lin Yuan wouldn't be able to deal with the aristocratic families and sects in the south in one go. If he used forceful methods, it would undoubtedly lead to a counterattack. When that time came, no one would be able to gain any benefits. However, the problem of the Sky Demon was imminent. Under the situation where the Northern Frontier didn't attack the South and the Guardians of the Heavenly Gates didn't take action, it was definitely impossible for the Southern cultivation world to contend against the Sky Demon. Even if they could kill the Sky Demon's vessel, they didn't have the corresponding methods to seal the Sky Demon's actual body. Furthermore, no one dared to guarantee that their mental defenses were perfect and wouldn't be taken advantage of by the Sky Demon. In the face of this disaster, the aristocratic families and sects in the South could only choose to cooperate. When they were at their most united, they would be split up and then scattered to different places. With the support of the Northern Frontier Academy and the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce, they would naturally be able to bring peace to the world. As for not agreeing? Previously, you said that you would find a safe island for us in the Endless Sea, but you wouldn't interfere with our diplomatic issues with the Sea Demon clans. Now, you want us to help you conquer the Sea Demon clans. Can I assume that you're only using us as cannon fodder to help you conquer a territory in the Endless Sea on the Northern Frontier? When the Sea Demon clans take revenge, you'll push us out to vent their anger. This time, it wasn't Sun Xingzi who spoke. Instead, it was the representative of the He Tu Li family's second branch. As a force that had been named to be eliminated, he naturally wouldn't watch as Lin Yuan and these aristocratic families and sects rejoiced. Once they reached an agreement, the next step would be to stabilize the internal situation before resisting foreign aggression. At that time, none of the aristocratic families and sects that had been named by Lin Yuan would be able to escape. This is what I want to say. Lin Yuan glanced at the representative of the Li family meaningfully and secretly praised him for his assistance. After clearing his throat, he continued, even if you go to the sea and live in an environment surrounded by sea demons, you will still pose a great threat to the Northern Frontier. Therefore, you must prove your allegiance to me. If you don't offend some of the sea demon clans, won't you be able to ignore my protection at any time and return to the continent directly after you've recovered? Do we look like we have so much time to play with you? Prove their allegiance, including Sun Xingzi. All the cultivators in the south fell silent. Even the representative of the Li family didn't know how to refute him. There was no trust between them. Trying to gain something without risking anything was just wishful thinking. Chapter 954. Even if you want to show us your allegiance, shouldn't you let us know who we are going to deal with in the Endless Sea? The luxuriously dressed old man from before spoke again. A powerful aura was released, firmly locking onto the Li family's representative. Who among the people present here wasn't as cunning as a monkey when it came to hair? How many of them couldn't see through the Li family's intentions? The Dragon Tribe of the Four Seas and the Sea Demon Guild. Lin Yuan put his hands behind his back and answered without hesitation. In an instant, question marks appeared on the heads of everyone present. Although the Dragon Tribe of the Four Seas and the Sea Demon Guild were the forces in the deep sea of the Endless Sea, they were quite famous. No one would ask a stupid question like who the overlord of the Endless Sea was, and no one would question whether the Sea Demon Guild, which could take root in the deep sea and compete with the Dragon Tribe of the Four Seas, was as powerful as the legends said. They couldn't even deal with the demonic beasts in the outer sea. How could they deal with the Dragon Tribe of the Four Seas and the Sea Demon Guild? Wasn't this a joke? The information you know is old news. First of all, I can assure you that although the Dragon Tribe of the Four Seas is still powerful, they are weak in reality. Now, in the outer sea, the demonic beasts without dragon blood are killing and attacking each other, trying to build a huge empire in the outer sea that is not inferior to the Dragon Tribe of the Four Seas. For now, one is flourishing and the other is declining. The comprehensive strength gap is not big. I have a way to make the demonic beasts in the outer sea fight with the dragon blood beasts. The first is that some of you know that the deep sea of the Endless Sea has encountered some changes before, such as Sun Xingzi. Therefore, the situation in the deep sea is not good, especially the Dragon Tribe of the Four Seas. They suffered heavy losses in that catastrophe. Previously, they were competing with the Sea Demon Guild. But now, if the two sides really fight, the Sea Demon Guild will be the final winner. Moreover, there has always been friction between the two sides, so they need a fuse to ignite their conflict. Although the Siren Guild was powerful enough to stand up to the Dragon Tribe of the Four Seas, they were basically just an idle organization. Just like the Demon Slayer Guild, other than putting out a high bounty, they had no means to make all their members listen to their orders. They could bully the weak, but if they really wanted to bite a hard bone, they would break their own legs before they even made a move. This was the third reason. Once I find the right opportunity, the outer sea monster beasts will definitely give up on killing each other. After all, they have been bullied and discriminated against by the dragon bloodline monster beasts for so many years. The hatred between the outer sea monster beasts and the dragon palace of the Four Seas cannot be erased. However, if the Sea Monster Guild and the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas work together, the outer sea monster beasts will not be able to gain any advantage in a short period of time. If you join us as reinforcements, you will immediately gain the friendship of the outer sea monster beasts. You will also have the protection of the northern frontier. At this point, Lin Yuan cleared his throat and said with a smile, "The Dragon Clan of the Four Seas and the Sea Monster Guild are all in the past. It won't be long before the Endless Sea ushers in a round of reshuffling. At this time, don't you want to intervene and stand on the Endless Sea?" The surroundings were still silent. However, many people's eyes lit up. If they had to choose between the Sky Demon and the Demon Beasts, most of the humans would choose the Demon Beasts. Not only because the Sky Demon was an existence that not everyone had the ability to kill or seal, but also because, from the prosperity of humanity to the present era, the demon beasts had always been an existence that humans could take as they pleased. Even the Endless Sea, which was the source of the demon veins on the land, was nothing more than livestock in the eyes of most humans. What was more, what could they get by killing the Sky Demon? Honor or praise? What was the point of that? But on the other hand, after killing the demon beasts, they could get the flesh of the demon beasts to cook dishes, the monster cores of the demon beasts to refine elixirs that could not be bought with money, and the claws, teeth, and bones of the demon beasts to refine divine weapons. The benefits were simply innumerable. The most important thing was that this was a war between the demon beasts. They did not need to take the risk to kill the demon beasts. They only needed to use all kinds of magical treasures and spells to support the demon beasts and wait for an opportunity to pick up the corpses of the demon beasts. They could make a fortune. It's easy to say that we have a foothold in the Endless Sea. The demon beasts in the outer sea and the dragon bloodline demon beasts can move freely underwater and can even use water-type spiritual energy to enhance their innate abilities. However, if we go to the endless sea, we have to set up a protective shield to isolate ourselves from the seawater. Before we even fight, our gang chi will start to deplete. The deeper we dive, the faster our gang chi will be depleted. We might even die in the endless sea. Even if you have a way to let the outer sea and the dragon bloodline demon beasts fight, you can't let them choose the surface of the sea as their battlefield, right? I really can't. Lin Yuan shook his head very honestly. The light in many people's eyes dimmed again. Lin Yuan sneered and said, "However, the sky demon is here, senior. No matter if you choose to go north or go to sea, you will encounter all kinds of difficulties. Otherwise, if you insist on staying in the south and waiting for death, I have no way to persuade you. As I said, I'm just giving you a choice to live. I'm not here to be your nanny. Do you understand? If we really can't come to an agreement, you can choose to die. It will save us a lot of trouble at the northern frontier." The demon beast's elder still had a smile on his face. He opened his mouth but did not know how to refute. Did the northern frontier need them? No need. Guan Zhaoshan could casually create the Empress arsenal because she had a background in the northern frontier. This also meant that the northern frontier did not lack cultivation techniques, resources, and the like. The so-called sects and aristocratic families' inheritances were simply not worthy of their attention. Right now, the northern frontier's attitude was one of charity, not of bargaining. To put it simply, if you want to live, you have to risk your life for me. If I'm in a good mood, I'll reward you with something and let you continue to reproduce. If you don't want to cooperate with the northern frontier, then you can stay in the south and wait for death. The northern frontier definitely won't frown. Compared to the northern frontier acting on their own, they were even more inclined to let the sky demon deal with the southern cultivation world and the remaining resistance forces in the central plains. When the northern frontier was stabilized, they would go south and sweep away the sky demon in one fell swoop, completely devouring the former territory of the Shenwu dynasty. This was very cruel. But this was reality. There were no hot-blooded youths here who had just entered the Jianghu. They were all old people who had been in the south for many years. In their opinion, the northern frontier's methods were the most normal way of governing. Chapter 955. Thank you for your advice. The old man in luxurious robes sighed softly, then changed the topic and asked, "We understand what Miss Guan has said. Before we discuss and come up with an answer for Miss Guan, may I ask what your identity is in the northern region? Can your words today represent the attitude of the northern region? If we work for the northern region and end up with our families broken, wouldn't that be a joke?" The attitude of the northern frontier had been expressed, and the conditions had been listed. Life and death were decided in an instant. Under such circumstances, they had no room to bargain. But before that, they had to confirm Guan Zhaoshan's identity. If Guan Zhaoshan said she didn't have the final say, wouldn't they have given it for nothing? The Shenwu dynasty's territory isn't small. After Lei Qiushan usurped the throne, he even expanded it slightly. But overall, it's divided into 4 regions. One is the northern frontier bordering the Hengduan Mountains, another is the Shuangjian dynasty's north, the central plains bordering the Qinjiang dynasty, and the south where you lived before. Among them, the central plains is the most stable, the south is the most prosperous, the north is the most vast, and the northern frontier is the most bitter. But now, the northern frontier and the north are both under the rule of the northern frontier. The two can be called the north, and this region is led by the king of the northern frontier, Li Zhong. As for the remaining central plains and south, as you know, our dragon king doesn't like trouble, so he won't show his power in front of others. He only needs to grasp the weakness of us humans and become the god of royalty. So, even if the northern frontier swallows the central plains and south, they won't establish a unified dynasty. After all, there are so many factions in the northern frontier now. It's fine to be under Li Zhong when they're all huddled together, but when the territory grows bigger, they'll definitely split up. After all, If they sleep in the same bed and dream different dreams for too long, there'll definitely be unforeseen events. Therefore, not long after, the king of the Central Plains and the king of the South will appear one after another. The three of them will unite to form the entire northern frontier. However, without the Dragon King's command, although the three of them are united, they'll still do things their own way. Lin Yuan slowly clenched his fists, a faint smile on his lips as he said in a deep voice, "The candidate for the king of the Central Plains has been decided. When the time comes, the head of the Ether Association, Jiao Wuing, will lead the Ether Association to the Central Plains to establish a dynasty. The candidate for the king of the South has not been decided yet. It requires achievements, connections, and reputation." If I put it this way, do you understand why the Ether Association is helping me, and why I will go against the great strategy of the northern frontier and give everyone a way out? Hiss. The sound of gasps could be heard again. Everyone had their own astonishment. For example, the leader of the Ether Association, a huge organization that was above the entire dark forces in the south, was actually the former crown prince of the Thousand Swords dynasty who had been dragged into hell before he could ascend to the throne. This was a huge organization that had been created right under Lei Qiuxing's nose. Of course, there were also those who were astonished by Lin Yuan's generosity. Dividing a dynasty into 3 dynasties, as long as Lin Yuan existed, the 3 would definitely be united and defend against external insults. However, a dynasty could not be compared to a dynasty. Even if they were given 10,000 years to develop, the 3 sides would still restrain and balance each other. No one could challenge Lin Yuan's authority. And this method of dividing the dynasties not only did not weaken the overall strength of the northern frontier, it also separated the different factions, so as to prevent the northern frontier's upper echelons from falling apart due to political differences. Such generosity and boldness were far from what ordinary people could compare to. If that was the case, the eyes of a group of southern cultivators immediately burned. This empress who had her family ruined and her family killed and went to the northern frontier undoubtedly had huge ambitions. She did not want to be ruled by Li Zhong, so she sought riches in danger and tried to become the future queen of the south. When the time came, there would be 3 kings. With Li Zhong being the oldest and having the deepest foundation, the Central Plains and the South would definitely have to work together to resist him. Therefore, Jiao Wuing would definitely support Guan Zhaoshan to ascend to the throne. The Northern Frontier Academy? The Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce? Who knew if the Central Plains and the South would follow suit and build similar organizations? When that time came, whether they went to the Central Plains or stayed in the South, they would be able to transform from unorthodox cultivators into the upper echelons of one of the 3 dynasties in the future. Since Miss Guan said so, I understand. Sun Xingzi chuckled and said, "From today onwards, the Yangji sect will be disbanded. When this is over, we will definitely support Miss Guan to ascend to the throne of the South." Miss Guan is a southerner. If there is to be a queen, it will definitely be Miss Guan. We will definitely support you. Me too. Immediately, the elders of the South all spoke up. Who didn't want power? Who wanted to leave their home? The throne of the northern frontier had already been decided. They had nothing to do with Li Zhong, so they would definitely not be able to gather enough merit to ascend to the throne. However, if they could build a relationship with Guan Zhaoshan and Jiao Wuing, it did not matter if they disbanded their sects or weakened the aristocratic families. They would enter the circle of the northern frontier. When the time came, would the northern frontier subtly influence them, or would they not listen to orders and make the Central Plains and the South independent? Wouldn't it all depend on their own abilities? This Guan will remember everyone's kindness. If that day really comes, this Guan will definitely not forget everyone's joint efforts. Lin Yuan cupped his fists at everyone, and the smile on his face gradually became warm. Eliminating the ambitions of the South's cultivation world, breaking up their unity, and even making them kill each other for benefits and power. On this day, he had already thoroughly planted the seeds. He was only waiting for the northern frontier's army to descend to the south to reap the harvest. Boiling the frog in warm water and burning the boat were two diametrically opposed strategies. Anyone who had the means would choose the former. Lin Yuan was no exception. As for whether the Central Plains and the South would listen to orders and not listen to orders, or whether Lin Yuan would maintain his divine majesty and descend to the South, it was not something these people who were full of tricks could decide. No matter how cunning they were, could they fight against the combined forces of Jiao Wuing, whose life was in Lin Yuan's hands, and Lin Yuan himself? It was impossible. Just wait for death. They coveted the resources that Yi Qingyu had given them, and they also wanted the path of survival that the northern frontier had given them. Now, they were still not satisfied and wanted to get their hands on the northern frontier's authority. Such scum had no value in living. It was better to cut them all down and use them as nutrients to nourish the soil of the northern frontier. After the crowd gradually dispersed, Jiao Wuing walked up to Lin Yuan and said in a deep voice, "Congratulations, Dragon King, for getting what you wanted. Not only did you ruin the Sky Demon's plan to descend to the south to search for carriers and have a decisive battle with the northern frontier, but you also defeated the alliance of the South's cultivation world without shedding a drop of blood. The establishment of a lie requires countless lies to make up for it." Lin Yuan's expression did not change as he said calmly, "Now, you should pretend to fully support me. Instead of wasting time, you should lead the Ether Society to a massacre." Chapter 956. At the end of this month, the entire South seemed to be covered in a layer of blood. After Lin Yuan changed the terms of the bet, the noble families and sects that had signed their names were all massacred. It was not that the Ether Society was strong. After all, since these factions dared to sign this bet, they naturally had plans to shed all pretense of cordiality. Therefore, when they joined forces, not only were they not inferior to the Ether Society, their combined strength was even stronger. But the problem was that after Lin Yuan expressed his stance, they would not only have to face the Ether Society. After knowing that Guan Zhaoshan was going to be the Southern King, and with the help of the Ether Society and the remnants of the Jiao clan, even the factions that had previously stayed out of the matter seemed to have gone crazy and participated in this massacre. If they could successfully get on the good side of the future Southern King, the benefits they could obtain would be so great that it would make people green with envy. With the cooperation of the Ether Society and the Rogue Cultivator Alliance, with the bounty of points, the members of these factions were like demonic beasts that the demon-subduing Master Guild had put a bounty on. Even if they wanted to drink water, they had to first test whether the water was poisoned. They had to keep one eye open even when they slept, afraid that they would be assassinated unknowingly. With the cooperation of the Southern Forest Alliance, it would be a joke even if they wanted to send the old, weak, women and children away. Due to Lin Yuan's outburst in Zhulu City, the children who were below the height of a wheel and infants in swaddling clothes could live, but they would be adopted and taught. Forget about avenging their clansmen or sects when they grew up, they would probably even forget their own names in a few years. Although they could preserve their bloodline, it was no different from dying out. As for the adults or the young boys and girls who had already begun to remember, no one showed them the slightest bit of pity. Noble families and sects were such existences. When the factions they belonged to were prosperous, even if you were just a side branch or a servant, you could still make the rogue cultivators and mortals respect you when you walked out and revealed your identity. You could even obtain all kinds of conveniences and benefits when you went about your business. However, if the factions they belonged to were unlucky, all of them would be unlucky as well. No one could stay out of the matter. Slaughter, slaughter, endless slaughter. The cooperation of the entire southern cultivation world had almost cut off all paths of survival for these factions. Even the demon sect, who had always wanted to stir up trouble in the south, and the Sky Demon, who was moving their main forces south, kept quiet out of fear. No one dared to take the initiative to participate in this matter. After all, the words, "Northern Frontier," were the biggest deterrent to Sky Demon. The Sky Demon did not go south for the sake of obtaining more carriers because they did not have enough carriers to start the final battle with the Northern Frontier. It was not that they had let go of the Northern Frontier, but that they had suffered heavy losses under the various tactics of the northern frontier. They had no choice but to give up their offensive posture in order to maintain the stalemate between the two sides. Otherwise, after a period of time, it would not be them attacking the northern frontier, but the army of the northern frontier going south to slaughter the Sky Demon. Yes, slaughter. Among the Sky Demon who had invaded the Shenwu dynasty, there were new Sky Demons, and there were also old Sky Demons who had invaded several worlds. It was not that they had never seen an existence that could kill a Sky Demon, but it was really the first time they had seen a faction like the northern frontier, where everyone could kill a Sky Demon. If it were not for the fact that the two sides were still in a stalemate and the war had not yet concluded, there might have been Sky Demon who could not hold back and rushed out of the Shenwu dynasty's sphere of influence to surrender to the Elysium Guardians. After all, being captured and sealed for hundreds of years and being completely killed were two completely different concepts. As for whether the Elysium Guardians would hand over the Sky Demon that they had sealed to the northern frontier to deal with? What a joke! There were so many Sky Demons sealed on the Tianwu continent. Even if the builders of some forbidden areas had passed away, and outsiders had no way of retrieving the items that sealed the Sky Demon, that did not mean that the Elysium Guardians had lost control over all the Sky Demon. However, up until now, there were so many so-called seal-breaking Sky Demons that had caused the Elysium Guardians unspeakable suffering. Which faction would send their sealed Sky Demon to the northern frontier to be slaughtered? Although the Sky Demon was ruthless and bloodthirsty, he was not a fool. There were already higher-ups in the Sky Demon who had realized that the northern frontier had most likely already had an irreconcilable conflict with the Elysium Guardians. However, the conflict between the northern frontier and the Elysium Guardians was one thing, but the two sides would not fight because of this. Right now, the Sky Demon had just changed their strategic target, and the members of the northern frontier had appeared in the south. To the Sky Demon, this was undoubtedly bad news. When the sun set, Lin Yuan, who had settled down in the headquarters of the Ether Society, picked up the bronze wine bottle in front of him and drank all the wine in one gulp. His expression was somewhat gloomy. According to the embroidered uniform guard's intelligence, the Sky Demon had already arrived in the south. However, he had caused such a huge commotion in the south. Not only did the Sky Demon not take advantage of the situation to fish in troubled waters, he had even temporarily let go of some of the southern cities that he was about to take down. He had gathered his troops and retreated 15 kilometers outside the city, as if he wanted to see what was going on in the coastal areas before making his next move. This also meant that the Sky Demon did not know about the trouble that the northern frontier was currently facing. They had deployed their troops in the south, but because of Guan Zhaoshan's identity as a member of the northern frontier, they had stopped. It was obvious that they were wary of the methods of the northern frontier. They were worried that the chaos in the south this time was because the northern frontier had planned to trap and kill a batch of Sky Demon. They would also take this opportunity to lure the northern frontier's troops south and watch over the central plains. This was a good thing, but at the same time, it was also a bad thing. Lin Yuan would never forget that previously, a second-generation Sky Demon with a noble bloodline had escaped into the Hengduan Mountains and disappeared without a trace. Further back, the Purgatory Lu family's old ancestor had also escaped into the Hengduan Mountains after destroying the mountain-blocking city and disappeared without a trace. If this second-generation Sky Demon still existed in this world, it would be impossible for him not to come out and stir up a storm. At the very least, he would not watch the Sky Demon army return in defeat at the Wei River without doing anything. If the northern frontier had good weather, Lin Yuan would not have such thoughts. However, there was a shadow demon, Su Yen, in the northern frontier, and an unknown number of immortals. Those immortals with intelligence had also disappeared. Currently, the only one who was still active was Lei Fan, who had cultivated the scripture of living. The second-generation Sky Demon, the demonized Fong Tian, the resurrected Lei Fan, the sudden increase in immortals, and the shadow demon, Su Yen, these existences that had mysteriously disappeared and mysteriously appeared one after another were constantly reminding Lin Yuan that an invisible net was coming towards him. If he could not find the other party before they took the initiative to show themselves, then he would definitely be doomed. Chapter 957. Who could it be? Lin Yuan's eyes narrowed slightly. The existence hiding in the shadows was definitely not some nameless person. To be able to order Lei Fan and Su Yen around was nothing much. After all, they were just two natives of the Sky Martial Continent. To an ancient being, they were just ants that could be destroyed with a wave of their hand. But even Red Cloud Taoist and Drought Demon, these famous ancient beings were played in the palm of the other party. Lin Yuan had even thought that the existence that turned the northern frontier into an underworld was Drought Demon. But the previous confrontation had overturned this point of view. Such methods, such shrewdness, what was that person trying to do? Lin Yuan felt an inexplicable sense of frustration. He was not afraid of powerful enemies, because those so-called powerful enemies were just a mountain in front of him. As long as he worked hard, he would be able to climb over the mountain sooner or later and step on the peak of the mountain under his feet. However, the other party's move was like a poisonous snake hiding in the grass, approaching Lin Yuan little by little, waiting for a good enough time to bite Lin Yuan and inject deadly venom into his body. Lord Dragon King, the chaos in the south has been quelled. No matter what the remaining cultivators are thinking, at least before the problem is solved, they will definitely not have the guts to fall out with the northern frontier. Your subordinate congratulates the Dragon King first. Qiao Wuing's voice sounded from behind him, accompanied by the sound of the black armor rubbing against each other as he walked. It sounded unusually cold and hard. The chaos cannot be considered as a disaster. And among the remaining people, there are many who deserve to die. Many of them will join me, and there may be many who will join you. But my attitude, you should understand it, right? Lin Yuan placed the bronze wine bottle on the table in front of him and replied expressionlessly. Although the Dragon King has given them two ways to survive, whether it is going north or going out to sea, they can avoid the disaster of the Sky Demon. But the Dragon King has said that there is no beginning and no end to the three kings. This also means that there is only one way to survive. Either they obediently go to the northern frontier, come into contact with all the armed forces and cooperate with the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce and the Northern Frontier Academy, or they will die. There is no need to say more about the sections. Whether it is in the past, present, or future, the sects of the Northern Frontier will only exist in the form of the Academy, and will be directly under the jurisdiction of the Northern Frontier Prince's Mansion. You can allow the sects to integrate into the Northern Frontier Academy, but you will definitely not allow any sects to exist independently of the Academy. Anyone who resists this rule is disloyal and should be killed. As for the aristocratic families, small and medium-sized aristocratic families may be spared, but for the large aristocratic families and even the first-class families to integrate into the Northern Frontier, it is tantamount to a fool's dream. Even if you are willing to do so with Li Zhong's methods, you will not be able to suppress them for a while. And aristocratic families are never reasonable. As long as they have a firm foothold, their roots will grow deeper and deeper. So, these people must be killed, and at the very least, a large aristocratic family must be divided into different small and medium-sized aristocratic families and placed in different places. Jiao Wuing's gaze turned, and he said loudly. At this point he paused and suddenly changed the topic. He asked doubtfully, "The Dragon King's thoughts are not difficult to guess, but I do not understand why the Dragon King values the Northern Frontier Academy so much." Lin Yuan was slightly startled and turned his head to look at Jiao Wuing, who was wrapped in pitch-black armor. What I want to say is that the Dragon King's banning of the sects has always been something that the imperial dynasties could not do. It has both advantages and disadvantages for the imperial dynasties, but overall, the benefits are definitely great, because this will make the imperial dynasties more stable. But similar things can be done by the imperial court, just like how Lei Qiusheng trained Shen Linjun, directly taught by the imperial court and the imperial clan. Not only can it ensure tyrannical fighting power, but it can also guarantee loyalty. If it is like now, those sects teach their own things, it is easy for them to learn miscellaneous things, and loyalty will also be a problem. If their teachers are not loyal to the Northern Frontier, how can these students be loyal to the Northern Frontier? Jiao Wuing bowed, and his tone was somewhat resentful, as if he was worried that Lin Yuan would be angry. The Northern Frontier Academy's 100 Schools of Thought debate will indeed cause many students of the academy to learn miscellaneous things, but on the other hand, isn't this also a round of screening? If one doesn't have enough talent but is well versed in the various schools of thought, then he will definitely be a mediocre person. Such people, even if they are assigned to various positions after graduation, will only be officials. If they are not capable enough, they will not be able to achieve results, and naturally will not be able to be promoted. But they also ensure that there will be no shortage of low-level officials at the bottom, and those who are proficient in one or several schools of thought will naturally stand out very quickly. There is no need to waste time slowly testing how much talent a person has. In addition, it is precisely because the Northern Frontier Academy is gentle with the various sects that we have enough confidence to keep the instructors and deans loyal. Because if they continue to integrate members of the sects, their positions will become more and more unstable. Even if they have hidden some secrets before, as time passes, they will have no choice but to dig out their secrets. Only by cultivating outstanding students can they keep their positions. On the other hand, if you work so hard, will the instructors who join the academy be willing to be under you? Lin Yuan raised the wine pot and poured himself a cup, and said with a cold smile, "Furthermore, letting the imperial court directly teach the youths of the northern frontier will definitely cause them to form cliques for their own selfish interests. When their students have formed into a certain scale, they will be like the old officials of the Wanjian dynasty." Even Lei Qiuxing felt as if there was a fishbone stuck in his throat, but there was no way to deal with them. So, do you hope that in the future, under your rule, there will be such existences? Xiao Wuing's pupils suddenly shrank. Now everyone knows that as long as one is born in the Northern Frontier Academy, one will be able to hold an iron bowl in the Northern Frontier. However, as time passes, the threshold to enter the Northern Frontier Academy will become higher and higher. It is hard to say what the future of these students, who will not be able to learn for a long time and come out to serve the Northern Frontier with a skill, will be. But what I can be sure of is that in the Northern Frontier Academy, the better one's aptitude, the more they will learn. The more they learn, the longer they will need to learn. Such people will be the future pillars of the Northern Frontier. So, in the near future, not everyone will have the right to enter the Northern Frontier Academy. Based on their learning progress, the length of time each person will study in the Northern Frontier Academy is different, and the position they hold after graduation will also change. Once again drinking the wine in the wine cup, Lin Yuan said with a smile, "Only when all aspects are combined can the Northern Frontier Academy develop better and better. The teachers will do their best, and the students will die for it. Not to mention the loyalty of Shen Linjun and Lei Qiuxing, these students will definitely cherish the position they have earned through years of hard work. In addition, their teachers are not officials, so it will be difficult for them to form cliques for their own selfish interests, right?" You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.